Okay. We're going to go ahead and start. This is a Boulder City Council meeting of August 6, 2019. Lynette, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Brockett. Present. Carlisle.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Morzell. Present. Nagel. Here. Weaver.
Here.
Yates.
Here.
Young. Present. We have a quorum.
Excellent. You guys may notice that we're starting an hour late because it was National Night Out. And so we went out in pairs to visit block parties that were happening around town, along with our police officers and firefighters, to get to know community members more. So because of that, we are not going to have open comment tonight, and we are going to jump right into the work of this meeting. So with that, we will start.
Your consent agenda tonight, it contains items A through O.
So there's a long list. A few of them we wanted to speak to, right? A bunch of these are first reading for meaty matters that are going to be the subject of public hearings coming up in subsequent meetings. So, go ahead.
So I sent out a hotline this afternoon asking council if you all would be amenable to adding an additional option for the Lawns Garden preservation. That would be of extending the 0.15 cent sales tax and having the whole of the revenue for 1 year go towards the conservation easement.
Okay, so this is yet one more option out of, there were 10,
Can I
10
speak
others?
to that too?
Sure.
I support Mary's suggestion. And keep in mind, this is just first reading, so I guess I think what Mary and I are asking for is if we're going to pass all, I don't know, 8 versions of 2.0, we're just asking if this,
10.
or 10, however many versions of 2.0 there are, we're just asking if you all would accommodate us and include what's on the, whatever color the sheet is, orangish sheet, which Tom wrote up very quickly, as a 9th or 11th version or whatever. Obviously, we can have discussion about it at public hearing in a week or two, but we're just asking if you would at least throw this into the mix so we can have a dialogue around that later on.
Okay, and the one sentence reason for this twist on this variation, it's probably in your email, but do you want to just explain why this variation, so when people look at it, they know what they're considering?
Well, one of the concerns that I have about all the other options is that they are taking ongoing revenue and using it for a one-time purpose, and using this option would take it, make it a one-time purpose. So it would be consistent with the operational process of the city. It's not law, but it's an operational process that it's used. And there are some other reasons, which I'm happy to share when we have the full discussion.
Excellent. Okay, that's helpful context. Anything
And
else?
one question that this raises for me is I would want to hear from our open space director, Burke, to let us know, taking one whole year of 0.15, what would that do to your budget and your work plan in the following year?
So let's take that as a first reading question for staff to address in the written materials. Anything else on consent? Yes.
I got a couple quick ones. One, I just wanted to call out, we're appointing Dr. David Gross to the City Audit Committee. Dr. David Frederick did this for many years, helped the city with this, and thank him very much for his service if he's listening. But I'm excited that Dr. Gross is joining us. I served with him on the dairy board for a couple of years. He was the treasurer and now the board chair, and we're fortunate to have his financial expertise being lent to us. So just wanted to speak to that.
And we're going to hear from him next week. Yeah.
Yeah, so I look forward to that. The other one, we got an email from the chair of the Human Relations Commission, Nikhil Mankekar, about the Human Rights Ordinance and the potential to include some additional language around religious expression in the updates that we're hearing. And I don't want to try to suggest amended language on the first reading tonight, but I just wanted to ask staff if they could, for the second reading, investigate those concepts and maybe bring to us some options for consideration when we do consider that ordinance.
We actually do have a blue sheet.
All right.
We propose amended language. Sorry,
That was
blue
really
sheet with
quick. Thank
Proposed
you.
amended language.
That's excellent.
Okay, so,
I'll just propose that we include this in our first reading.
and it basically defines religious expression, for those of you who are wondering. Okay, so with those two additions, are we good on the consent?
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Does that include this?
Yeah, those two
As
changes.
As amended.
So, thank you.
Any more discussion? Okay,
It's a roll call vote. We start with Councilmember Morzell,
Oh, yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yates,
Aye.
Young,
Yes.
Brockett,
Aye?
Carlisle,
Aye.
Jones.
aye.
The motion passes unanimously. You have two call-up considerations tonight. The first one is a landmark alteration certificate for 920 Mapleton Avenue.
Does anybody, this is the one with solar panels on the roof? Does anybody have questions or want to call that up?
Thanks for adding solar panels to your house.
Yeah, indeed. Okay,
The second one is utility easement vacations for 2150 55th Street.
same thing.
If it gets called up, I'll recuse myself. That's where my office is.
Does anybody want to call up or discuss or have questions about this?
I do have a question. And the question has to do with, these changes that are going in now, will they prevent, we're going to go into the East Boulder sub-community plan, and I don't know if this parcel is included in that, or how we're going to configure the East Boulder sub-community plan, but I'm curious as to if these changes will negatively impact future potential development that might happen there.
So I don't exactly know what the boundary of.
Can you introduce
Oh,
yourself?
I'm sorry, Charles Farrow, Planning Department. I don't know the East Boulder Sub-Community Plan defined boundary per se off the top of my head, but the vacation of these easements in effect implements a site review for a two-story office building that was approved in August of last year. So it was sent to the planning board, it wasn't called up, so this just effectuates that approval.
Okay, thank you so much.
You bet, my pleasure.
Okay, sounds like that does it for those call-ups? Okay,
Okay, your first public hearing tonight is a motion to adopt the Manufactured Housing Strategy and Action Plan.
all right.
Good evening. I'm Kurt Fernhaber, Director of Housing and Human Services. And tonight we're going to be giving a concise presentation on really the results of the last few months of community engagement. And it's a strategy that you're being asked to approve. It's really a roadmap to our updated strategy of the activities that we'll be focusing on over the next couple of years to positively impact the experience that residents have in the manufactured home communities. And what we found in you can go to in going to these communities, it was reaffirmed to us the strong community that exists there. This is Sharon Simmons in the middle there. She's here tonight. This is her glory moment here. But she's representing the HRC tonight. She sits on the
Which
HRC.
stands for?
Human Relations Commission. And the point of this is that people in these communities are involved in their communities. And in Sharon's case, she's involved outside of her community as well. It's a great example of what we observed in these communities. They had a lot of impact in the whole process of where we got to today. So tonight we're going to be led by Crystal Launder, who's a housing planner in our department, and Brenda Rittenauer was very involved in this project, guiding the community engagement process as our neighborhood liaison.
Thank you. So in discussion of the Manufactured Housing Strategy Action Plan, we're going to be covering what the policy is, because that's really the background for this strategy. The 9-step decision-making process that we went through to arrive at what the product that's in front of you tonight, and the analysis and engagement that happened between the February 26th study session and today. So it was before you as a study session, and you provided some input, and it's back in front of you today as for adoption. We also have some updates to provide that have happened between now and that study session. And then we'll provide a high-level overview of the strategy and action plan. And then in the parlance of the 9-step decision-making process, we'll be at step 7, which is making a decision. So the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan includes a policy focused on manufactured housing. And in it are support for retaining manufactured housing as a housing option, preserving these communities, development of new manufactured home communities, increased resident-owned communities, and reducing and eliminating health and safety issues, and rehousing displaced households. And the 9-step decision-making process, which was adopted by the city, was used to frame this process. We began when we met with you in February, we were at step 5, which was identifying the options. Prior to that, there was a whole body of engagement and collection of information to provide in that memo that informed that study session as background, foundation of information and inquiry. Step 6 is that the activities that have been happening between when we met in February and today, and including the analysis and then the engagement activities. And then step 7 is tonight. So on the left, you'll see the areas of focus for the analysis that were prepared by staff, including infrastructure, pad rent stabilization, licensing, energy efficiency, and land use code. So there was a staff analysis across a variety of departments that informed those analyses. And then we prepared recommendations, including an updated guiding principles. We took feedback from both City Council in February and the public to add accountability as a 4th principle. And then the proposed action plan was put out to the stakeholders in the broader community, as well, and ordinance ideas that fall within that action plan. In our engagement activities included staff office hours. There was a survey that was published in June, and it was kept open until after the Human Relations Commission hearing in July. We also, in April, we met with the Youth Opportunity Advisory Board, and so that was before we had the analysis all completed. So they didn't actually vote on the proposal or provide any input on it, but they just provided individual input. The Housing Advisory Board and the Human Relations Commission supported the strategy, and they provided a little kind of thoughts, specific thoughts as well that you can see in the memo. But generally in support. I think the most significant thing that has happened between when we met in February and today was adoption at the state level of the Mobile Home Park Act Oversight Bill. That was a bill that was sponsored by Edie Hooten, who you'll see there talking to Jared Paulus, who's holding his pen up to her. There was a city and county staff team that helped inform it. The big kind of piece of forward movement is the dispute resolution and enforcement program that will go into effect on May 1st, 2020. So that'll be in full operation at that point at the Colorado Division of Housing. We also, through the bill, they also identified or kind of clarified county and municipal powers to enforce certain elements of the Mobile Home Park Act. It also extended the termination period for non-payment to give more opportunity to cure. And then it also extended the eviction period to give, if a resident were being evicted, it would provide a better time period for that person, that household, to receive the investment value back if they were to sell it or to find an opportunity to move it to another location. Another recent update was that the CU Boulder's Boulder Affordable Housing Research Initiative, or BARI, completed a survey that we partnered to develop a survey, and they completed that survey. And it was distributed to every household in the 4 communities that are within the city of Boulder. And there was a 20% participation rate. And I think it tells a very interesting story. It certainly shows that high level of homeownership that's provided in these communities. And it shows, that there are more families living in these communities. There are more households that have at least one member of the community that are, of the household that are over age 60, more Latino, more people who receive Social Security income, and their households, more than 3/4 of households receive or have incomes below $40,000 annually.
And can I just ask a question? On the MHCs, is that nationwide?
I'm sorry, this right here? This is for for Boulder Meadows, Vista Village.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but you
Oh, yeah.
have a distinguishment
Yes.
you distinguish between MHCs and Boulder, and I'm assuming that MHCs are nationwide.
No, those are the manufactured home communities in Boulder.
And Boulder means the city of Boulder.
Yeah, so that's,
Right.
so the survey was specifically targeted at the 4 communities inside our boundaries.
Right, but I guess I'm not getting what the difference is.
Yeah, so the gray bar includes all,
Oh,
right, all data for
okay, I get it.
for our communities. It's it's a lot of new information.
Right, I didn't know if you were just referring to Boulder's mobile home communities in the blue, but you're comparing that, and so that makes
Yes, I understand, yeah.
So it's
And that-
so you're comparing it to residents in Boulder, homeowners in Boulder?
Correct, yeah, so it's actually, the data is between the city of Boulder at large, it's the American Community Survey data on City of Boulder, and then the gray bars are the data for the manufactured home communities.
So a lot of disparity.
Yeah, there's a big difference. Other updates that we have since that study session include completion of a market analysis that was statewide on zero energy modular that was commissioned by the city in partnership with Energy Outreach Colorado, Habitat Colorado, and the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. And that looked at opportunities both in manufactured home communities for a zero energy modular, as well as looking at, just a typical single-family application.
Are you going to talk more about that later? Because it doesn't make sense what exactly it tells us.
The market analysis?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so at the broad level, there's a lot of opportunity, and it appears to be affordable.
But to say more about what ZEMs are, and that's affordable is the making of them, or
Yeah, so.
Just
so,
elaborate.
Would you like me to do that now?
sometime in your flow,
Okay.
address that.
Yeah,
whenever
I'll just do that now then. So zero energy modular housing is, construction techniques to create a zero energy, and then also mechanical equipment and monitoring and so forth to create a zero energy modular home. And basically, kind of what it looks at is that over time, it's an affordable home option. I think a lot of times with manufactured housing up front, it's more affordable, but then in the long run, with the energy costs that because manufactured housing has higher energy costs than a typical single-family home. So it does create more affordability when you look at the costs of both the housing and the energy.
And these particular units are, already exist or made some way, just explain that piece.
Sure. So in 2017, we visited we visited with the Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, and we saw we did site visits to several mobile home parks, or excuse me, manufactured home communities that have zero energy modulars in them, and I think only manufactured home communities. And we also visited a production facility. So they are being made. And it's just an opportunity to really advance energy efficiency for these homes. And we're also exploring it in the context of Ponderosa.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out if a company makes them, they are a thing, or they're widely used, or I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah, the next, one of the, coming up a little bit, we'll be talking a little bit more about that.
All right.
And it'll certainly come up in the Ponderosa context, when Ponderosa comes back up as well. So the other, in your packet as well, I notified that the House bill, there was an affordable housing bill that also passed, and it creates $30 million of additional funding for affordable housing. And one of the items that it can be used for is home removal, repair, or replacement. So we're just kind of looking into that and trying to see if there's opportunities to use it here locally. And then we were provided with an update that staff is enforcing through the rental licensing, and then also on a complaint basis, the lighting enforcement. And so if you wanted to look in your packet, the manufactured housing strategy is attachment A. And we're going to go over that now. So that strategy provides both a background on the work that it took to get here, and then also on manufactured housing in Boulder broadly. And the other key piece of it, separate from the action plan, is that it has guiding principles, including accountability, affordability, community, and viability. And the final section of that strategy is the action plan. And that action plan is set to a time period between 2019 and 2021. And so if you, just to help kind of navigate through that, the blue bars indicate the topic area, or that area of focus, in this case, infrastructure. Then every action that falls under that category is listed individually. Whether or not it has an ordinance or funding is in the next column. Who the lead department would be is in the column after that. And then the time period between now and the end of 2021 that work item is proposed to take place. And finally, if it does have an ordinance associated with it, what that kind of timing in terms of a quarter is that we're proposing. And then also on the slide, you will see the 5 areas of focus, which I'm going to walk you through now, and highlight what the action items are under each. So the first area of focus is infrastructure. The black box highlights the issues and concerns related to that. And then the action items that we're proposing are developing water and sewer standards, identifying, hold on one moment. Okay. Identifying code constraints. So if a manufactured home community owner is wanting to replace their infrastructure, are there elements of our code that are preventing that from happening, or making it prohibitive in some way? Utility bill notice requirements, so that park residents, or excuse me, manufactured home community residents would have, would know what that bill is that's billed to the manufactured home community owner. Maintenance replacement and service interruption plans. So those are 3 different types of plans that would need to be available. And then also an ordinance related to alternative lodging. So if there was an extended period of time where the infrastructure, sewer or water was disrupted, then a requirement to to pay for the lodging. The second topic area is the pad rent stabilization. And action items under that, really at the state level, just a reminder, we have the state statute on rent control. We can continue our exploration through completing the legal analysis for a local ordinance. Also continue to work with the manufactured home community owners to explore voluntary agreements. And then at the state level, because the state statute on rent control prohibits, appears to prohibit pad rent stabilization, then that's certainly a place to focus as well. The third area of focus is licensing and enforcement. And I think the way to kind of walk through this is actually to talk a little bit about the issues and concerns. So some of the major topic areas were infrastructure maintenance and management practices that were areas of concern where the idea of licensing was raised. But also from the resident perspective, there was concern about being able to actually, we have a bunch of ordinances in place, but there were concerns about being able to navigate, to navigate the city system to try to resolve if they had a concern, and then whether or not there was staffing available. So the licensing and enforcement action items are kind of a package that would focus on that. We found that it would take a lot of effort to create a licensing program. We'd have to create a new home for that licensing program because it doesn't neatly fit into rental licensing or business licensing. So this would create new ordinances, a navigation guide to help residents understand how to pursue their concerns, and then looking at our staffing and the adequacy of it, both now and then into the future as if we look at adopting additional ordinances. The fourth area of focus is energy efficiency. And so this is coming back to the zero energy modular. We are planning on doing a modular housing in Ponderosa, and we're currently looking for a site where construction could take place. We are also, related to energy efficiency, looking at, we are going to be piloting a solar garden for Ponderosa residents that should vastly reduce their energy bills, and that could then be applied in other communities. And then the energy impact offset fund is something that we will continue to explore as an opportunity to make for energy efficiency improvements in manufactured homes. The fifth topic area is the land use code, and primarily the goal is that we saw trying to advance here is development of new manufactured home communities, which hasn't happened despite having a policy in favor of that outcome. So a parcel analysis is being proposed there. And then we have, the way the action plan is laid out, we have a number of items under infrastructure, pad rent stabilization, local enforcement, energy efficiency, and then this other category we call other, that will kick in pretty quickly if the action plan is adopted. And that would happen in the third quarter and fourth quarter of 2019. Which brings us to the motion language, our proposed motion language.
Great, thank you for that. Sam?
I just have a really brief comment and a question at the same time. Clearly in Vermont, they build these. There's a company called Vermont, which is a private company that works with a state agency to build these zero energy modular homes. So when you talk about looking for a site, would you also be looking for the equivalent of Vermont locally, or could you contract with them, or what are your thoughts about that?
So Vermont could help us with this process as sort of a consultant on this. They've sort of made all the mistakes and learned all the lessons of how to do it right. So we are looking for a site within the city of Boulder to be able to do this. There's currently no manufacturing homes being completed in the city, in the state of Colorado right now. They've all basically moved out. So there's a real need for that. There's a real niche for it. And what we found in the East Coast is that it's sort of a normalized product that's occurring there. And so it's both local action as well as we're working with a number of state organizations to see if we can help encourage this at a state level as well.
Thank you.
Do you mean as a for-profit to come in and build these things, or just?
We're looking at partnering with Habitat to build some simple modular homes for the Ponderosa community.
Okay. Do other people have?
Yeah, I have a question on that specifically.
Okay, go ahead.
So would you be looking like for a warehouse, or are you, so it would be covered?
That's correct.
I mean, I was thinking, we do have our public works yard, and I'm wondering if we couldn't move some kind of a,
We're looking at that.
oh, good.
Yes.
Good.
Okay.
Because in order to get more mobile home communities, we need to have a place where they are manufactured nearby, so it
Right.
makes it economically feasible.
Aaron?
Just had a question with the solar garden pilot. Sounds like a great idea. Are you thinking about putting that on a building, but that the energy would be shared by people? What's the thought there?
The solar garden would be located at a different location on a city facility, and then the residents would subscribe.
Very nice. So it'd be somewhere else in the city of Boulder, but not on site. And would you be taking advantage of the new solar garden rules that the legislature just passed this in order to make that happen? Is it?
I don't know.
I think you probably would, but
Yeah.
that's great. That's exciting. Thank you.
Okay, Lisa, you have some questions? I have
Yeah,
some questions. Okay.
if you could go, I was just trying to go to our use tables. You, in one of your slides near the end, you said there's no more places for manufactured home communities in the city of Boulder. But actually, we have a lot of potential in other places. And I was reviewing our packet tonight for the use tables, and I saw, if I'm reading it correctly, that we could consider a lot other places or zones than we are using right now. One of the places that I have worked in as a geologist over time, well, for 40 years, is Jackson, Wyoming. And one of the beauties of downtown Jackson, Wyoming, is they have kind of a eclectic zoning where you'll have a manufactured home right next to some apartments, right next to a single-family house, right next to different uses. And I really would like to see something like that, and I know some people will probably get upset, but I would like us to start looking in those zones that we've identified in the use tables, where we could put clusters of manufactured homes, so that you could have maybe a 2-acre lot and you could put X amount of homes there. They're single-family houses, and I don't see why we wouldn't really start looking in those kinds of places. When we're looking...
Do you have any more questions?
No.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that you're looking at these other zones and that you're working with the planning department on not just manufactured housing communities zones, but that you're also looking in the RLs, the RRs, the REs, and those ones.
Yeah, so do you mind if should I respond to that, or?
Sure, then.
Yeah, so
You can turn that into a question, that's okay.
the way that,
Will you look at that?
yeah, so yes, the parcel analysis will start from what the use tables say, and I think that will inform the ideas of potential, looking into other zones, certainly, if there, if we aren't able to make any progress in the existing zones, or.
Well, I wouldn't even put it if, I would say, let's look at it. That's what I would encourage you.
Okay, I have a couple, then Cindy, then Mary. The Energy Impact Offset Fund, you had a question mark. Is that to get money to help pay for solar gardens for mobile home communities? Is that the connection?
It's kind of an open topic. It could be helping with replacement of, helping manufactured homeowners to replace their homes. So coming up with different partnerships with, desirable partnerships maybe with manufacturers and lenders, and kind of coming up with a whole package. It would be one idea. But there's a variety of ways that it could potentially be deployed. More and more, the Climate Initiative staff is looking at social equity, and so they're interested in looking at deploying it to serve people in these communities.
Okay.
It's kind of broad.
Okay, well, I was just trying to understand as we move forward with that. In terms of state legislative priorities, you mentioned, since we're on the legislative committee, I just want to make sure I have the ones. One is to look into the state rent control piece, at least as it regards to mobile home communities or manufactured home communities. Were there other things on our legislative agenda for next year?
Yes, I need to just refer back and look at that, but, yeah.
Okay.
Let me look back.
Okay. All right. Well, and you could maybe email that to us. I just think it's useful to know what's the next step we want to help, because whatever we do down there helps everybody statewide, not just our own community. Okay. So yeah, you can get us to it whenever you want. The third question was, or my last question is, so this strategy is focused just on the 4 communities strictly within our limits, city limits, but there's so many other mobile manufactured home communities, like in enclaves or right next to our boundaries, and I'm just kind of curious about a larger strategy with the county to also bring those into the fold, or to make sure that they also have energy efficient homes, or whatever it may be, even if they're not in our limits yet.
Yeah, the original intent on having it focus on the city was to look at how we could advance preservation and opportunities in the city. So it was really about keeping the conversation focused, because annexation, there are a number of communities. I think Columbine is one, San Lazaro, and then of course Ponderosa is kind of in the process. We now own Ponderosa. And Tabla Mesa Village are all eligible. So yes, that could be certainly a larger conversation. We haven't thought about it, but Boulder County is engaged on this topic at this point.
Well, I'll just note that even if they're not annexed, they're essentially in our community, and some of these efforts I would think would logically apply. Okay, Cindy and then Mary.
So I just have a small question under the guiding principles, which is on page 2 of the draft and page 889 of our 1,084-page packet. On the guiding principles, it says under accountability and under all 4 of the main topics that should is the verb, so that agreements, ordinances, and this may be for the city attorney, agreements, ordinances, and requirements should have clearly defined and practical enforcement mechanisms, et cetera. Why wouldn't that be will, since should implies that it may not be?
Well, we always try for clearly defined and practical. So I think it ideally would be a shall. That makes sense.
Either shall or
page are you
will.
on?
This is on page 2. It's just the draft of the
889.
main
Okay.
guiding principles.
Yeah.
889. Yeah. Just looking at it through there, I thought the will would be very emphatically standardize what was coming in there, rather than just we're trying for this. Now we're trying for it. We're going to do it.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not a lawyer.
It's all right, that might be a benefit.
That is a benefit.
Is that it for you?
That's all.
Mary?
So I have several questions. The first one is with respect to setting fixture limits. I thought that was an interesting idea that was had, I believe it was the Human Relations Commission. And I was interested in hearing a little bit more about how that discussion came about and what the aim would be, and how that would affect setting the operational requirements.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the concern. So it was part of their discussion. Sharon Simmons, who's sitting in the audience, is on the Human Relations Commission, and she's also a resident, and so is familiar with those issues. I think the concern is whether or not the systems are adequate to handle more homes, larger homes. So I think specifically larger homes. So currently, they're, the older homes are single wide, fewer bedrooms, and the larger homes that are coming in have more. So that's the concern. Can the old infrastructure handle the additional capacity?
And so that would affect how the operational requirements would be set?
It could be one of them.
You mean to up the standards?
Or to designate a fixture limit for.
And that would also affect like the earlier net zero energy homes, that the size of those, and it would set something like that. This seems like a good idea, but I'm just wondering what the implications are of doing something like that.
Yeah, yes, that's a good warning, and I think that's a nice opportunity to talk about how really this would be just the beginning of the conversation, and then doing a lot of work with the stakeholders to understand to really crystallize what we want, and then try to avoid those unintended consequences.
Thank you. And then I have another question with respect to the rulemaking on the affordable housing, that it's 19-1322. You spoke about staff involvement in the Oversight Act. Is staff involved in the rulemaking for the other one, the $30 million?
I'm not aware of it. Okay, no, we're not.
Is that something that could happen? Is that something that needs an invitation, or how does that work?
Well, so the rulemaking is because they're setting up a new program, and I mean, I believe one of the other interesting caveats I heard about with the $30 million is that a lot of it's actually going to be reallocated to a different department. It's paying back something, so I don't know how much it will turn into, or how much of it will go to this, category of work of, helping people remove their old homes, helping them fund purchase of new homes.
So the whole, what you're saying is the whole $30 million may not be available?
That's what I've heard.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned a little bit in the area of licensing, that perhaps licensing some of the operational requirements that could be established through ordinance would achieve the same outcome as licensing. Could you discuss a little bit more about that and what the pros and cons are?
Sure. Yeah. So I think, basically, when we had conversations with the licensing, we talked with both the rental licensing and with business licensing, and there's some of the hurdles include there would actually have to be a new license for the people who are doing the inspections, right? And when you think about it, there's 3 communities that they would have to license on whatever basis, so every 4 years or so forth. So there's not necessarily enough communities to justify that licensing would be one of the challenges. Another one is that just the business licensing function isn't necessarily set up to look at either of the issues that were raised around, the topic areas, I should say, that were raised around management practices. I would call it business practices or management practices, and then ensuring that infrastructure is running properly. So that's why that alternative approach of a package of ordinances and just ensuring that people understand how to, navigate a complaint and so forth is what we're proposing.
Okay, thank you. And my final question had to do, in the strategy itself, there was a line about expanding on-site human services and/or recreational programs. And I was just, I guess I was unaware that there was already some human services and recreational programs to expand upon. So I just wanted to hear a little bit about what is going on and what would be expanded.
Yeah, I mean, so probably at the basic level, and maybe we should have used a different word. Certainly, groups like EFA are supporting residents to, pay their rent when they run into a period where they don't have, maybe a low employment period or something like that. But in general, what we're looking at would be creating more recreational youth programming. So in Ponderosa right now, they just launched, I think it's called the Rec on Wheels program. And so they're bringing recreation to residents. And we have some other interested parties that provide human services.
And that seems like a really good idea because transportation can be a huge barrier in a lot of these communities. So
Yeah.
that sounded like a great thing. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Excellent. Why don't we turn to the public hearing? And you can make your comments afterwards.
It's questions.
Are they really questions?
Yeah, they really are questions.
Okay.
So I have two questions. One of them, in the document, you talked about chattel loans and how much more expensive they are and that their due date is much earlier than most mortgages. Do we have any programs in the city that people who want to live in a manufactured home community could apply to and seek some kind of funding support or a loan or something like that? Do we have anything like that?
We do not have that. Right now, I'm trying to think of the name of the organization because it changed names. Elevations Fund. Anyway, there is one program that offers a somewhat lower rate. It's, I think, ranges between 7 and 9% or something like that, and the standard rate right now is 9 to 11.
Right, which is really expensive. I mean, it kind of. I'll wait for my comment.
Yeah, I mean, I think exploration of that fund at the state level will be helpful, and we're also staff is also looking into what we have our mobile home repair program. So is there an opportunity to turn it into a down payment or something like that?
Yeah, I would like to see that. And then lighting enforcement came up. Can you just address that a little bit?
I can't address it.
Or how are you doing it and what is being enforced?
Yeah, I'll do what I can with your request. So what I was told, the update that was provided to me is that it's being enforced through rental licensing and on a complaint basis. And I really don't have any more information than that.
Okay.
Okay. Well, with that, let's turn to the public hearing. We have 16 people signed up to speak. If anybody else wants to speak up, if you could do so quickly up at that table, that would be great. Everybody will get 2 minutes apiece. If you could start with your name and your address, that would be great. And we will start with Tina Bogan. And if Teresa could be ready to go, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Tina Bogan.
Just grab that mic and bring it. There you go.
All right. And I live at 4475 Broadway, number 59 in the Ponderosa. So I'm just here to briefly touch on the annexation and zoning process, since we're almost there. So as this has moved along, the people that wish to stay in their current mobile homes, which is what we've been told from the beginning, because they don't qualify or can't or just don't want to, they're happy where they are and have put tons of money into their home to make it a nice home. really have nothing but the word of city employees and written in our resident guides that we get every few months with updates and everything. So we have nothing legal and binding that is securing our future there. People are getting nervous. We've lost 12 families already, and it's just not making a lot of sense to people that you spend all this money to put affordable homes in for other people, because it's looking like people that are living in Ponderosa may not make that transition or can't. And there's no reason for their homes that are there to leave. You know, those homes are fine. So I'm just asking that through this process, that you really take that into consideration. And we've asked for maybe like a legal contract, one-on-one between the city and a homeowner that's there. We were told no on that. We were told we'd be written, we were first told the zoning would never change, and that's changing. We were also told then that we would be written into the annexation, and we're not being written into that. So, you know, we don't really, everything's been subject to change. A lot of things have been subject to change, I should say. So I just want you to keep that in mind as this moves forward. There's, like I said, 12 families have left already. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, and we'll have staff address Ponderosa at the end after we hear some of your concerns. Okay. Teresa and then Tanya Petty. Tanya could be ready.
Hi, my name is Sharisa
Oh, I'm sorry.
Poteet. That's all right. It's a bad name. That's why I named my kids Tony and Randy. That's it. Good evening. I live in the Ponderosa, and I was forced to move there after the Violet Crossing development. I'm just learning about this study session. I wonder why the Ponderosa residents weren't invited. I guess it's because we're not in the city, but that would have been really nice. In my handout, you'll find information that was given to us during community engagement meetings that we all attended. The first sheet shows really amazing images of single-family homes. This is what we were first pulled on. Sheets 2 and 3 outline the cost. In the beginning, $740 to $795. I'm finding out that I'll be paying $1,200 more to own a Habitat for Humanity home. The next page is the flood protection analysis, where it shows on the west end where all the flood water is most likely to go. They want to add 9 more homes in that area. And the last page is a printout from the daily camera. Monday, you'll see the arrows, and the mobile homes are going anywhere from $59,600 to $86,000. We were offered far less for our homes. The government's long arm of encroachment is laying on the backs of Boulder's poorest residents. One of my neighbors digs through the trash to find items to sell during the summer so she can get by. I had another neighbor that didn't have heat all last winter. We have been encouraged to voice what we want for the Ponderosa. We all want single-family homes without shared walls. The plan has mostly multi-family homes. I'm almost finished. The plan now wants to add 9 more homes on the west side so folks can move to them while the homes are being built. 12 trailers are now vacant. Why can't we build in these spaces instead of destroying the small buffer on the west side? Before the Rosewood neighborhood was built, the city promised not to build here. Now they want to add more housing, crowding us in on land that absorbs rain during the storms. The city plan is making the Ponderosa a place we don't want to live in. We ask, please, for promises to be fulfilled. We ask for just compensation for our homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Tanya, and then Brad Olson.
Hello, my name's Tanya Petty. I live at Vista Village. I've been here many times. As a matter of fact, I've been coming since 2014 in regards to the water issues. People are being charged thousands of dollars for water they're not using. I've given you information from 2014 till now, and it happened to me in 2016 to the tune of $500, and went to DORA, and they dismissed it, even though I was discriminated against, harassed, intimidated, to the point where I had to have video cameras in my own home because of management and owner involvement. This has been an issue for a long time. It's still going on. The sewer backups, $32,000 damage to my home, $11,000 hotel costs, and $1,000 personally to me. The other was covered by my insurance, thank God. These backups have happened to so many people, but they're afraid to come in. This is raw sewage going into their homes that cannot be mitigated except for by being removed. And management's not taking responsibility for the infrastructure. They're not taking responsibility for the sewer damages. They came in my home and literally laughed at me, thinking it was funny that I had to live in raw sewage. The existing laws and ordinances are there. We need an officer to enforce them. We need a zoning commission or officer to be able to go in and investigate the infrastructure, enforce the existing laws and ordinances. A code enforcement officer would be able to give fines for noncompliance. They're charging residents for leaks, existing leaks in the system as a whole. There's no maintenance. The HOA has been 4 or 5 years now, and we won't be able to sustain ourselves if we don't have help from the city staff and from you guys in regards to this enforcement code and an officer to help us. No one's willing to come in and complain or make these complaints because of fear and retaliation, and it continues to go on. No enforcement, no need to comply. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Brad, and then Kathy Newland.
Let me introduce myself. I'm Brad Olson. I live at 4902 Clubhouse Court. I'm here on behalf of Boulder Vista Village, as well as Riverstone Communities and Orchard Grove. First, let me thank the city staff. One of the things that we've asked for is what was coined by one of the former council members as the Boulder Way, and the city staff has certainly done that. They've done an excellent job of being a thoughtful, respectful, and productive process with the discussion of important issues with all stakeholders, and that's to be commended. We would ask that and indicate that it's critically important that that process continue throughout the ongoing process. I guess I'm using process too many times. But we would ask that it continue, especially as ordinances are being drafted. It's important that that process also includes comment from stakeholders before the ordinance is released at first reading. So we would ask, I suppose, primarily the city attorney's office to engage in the same sort of thoughtful process. We know that park owners are part of the solution to the lack of affordable housing. We believe it's important to build community, and we do every day, and you'll hear from several individuals that will testify to that. We've sought a path based upon building community, not building walls, and we do it every day. Having a nice place to live is important for everyone. It does not happen by accident. We do have to manage and operate our parks every day so that they're lovely, safe, and affordable. Please do visit us. Hold us accountable. That's fine. Our parks are not home to just or even mostly vulnerable residents. At Vista Village, the average household income is approximately $50,000. Homes are being purchased now in the $75,000 to $150,000 range. We have very few evictions. Orchard Grove has, and you'll hear from a representative of Orchard Grove, has none. Vista Village has 2 to 4 in the last 10 years. We agree that parks are an important part of the solution, but the reality is we're a small part of the overall housing picture. We're something along the line of 2.8% of the total housing in Boulder. So we would ask for consistency.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy. And then Sarah Rutan.
Hi, I'm Kathy Newland. I'm the manager of Vista Village Mobile Home Park. I've been here before. It's good to see all of you. I just wanted to say a few things. My husband and I have managed Vista Village for 10 years. Of course, we're going to have unhappy residents. It's going to happen everywhere. We've invited the council members to visit us. As of this day, I've not seen any council member come into my door to visit us, and we really would like to welcome you to come in and talk to us, see what we do. We're very excited about working with Rec on Wheels. They were just in here last week, in our office last week, so we're going to be starting that. We are at full capacity. As soon as a house is ready to move out of the park, it's sold. They bring another one and it's sold. Yeah, they are going for very high prices. I'm even shocked at the prices that they're going for. We are on a waiting list. Vista Village is a very nice place to live. We do have unhappy people, but we have majority of happy people. And as I said, I really, really, really encourage any of you to please come into my office, talk to me, let me tell you face-to-face what we're doing to help the residents, the resources that we give the residents. I guess we're a good community. You know, we would do anything we can to help our residents.
So I just have a question. Last summer, I went to an eviction hearing for one of your residents, and you asked the judge to have me removed. So I'm curious about that.
I did not ask the judge to have you removed. Our attorney asked the judge to have you removed.
Well, you had talked with him. So I'm just making that comment.
Okay. And you know, I don't...
And that didn't feel too welcoming to me.
And it doesn't feel welcoming to be mocked by a bunch of people in the audience, to me either. You know, we would just all like to, it'd be nice for everybody to just get along. Come into our park.
I go to your park. I visit.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, and then Virginia Zukowski.
Hi, my name is Sarah Ruda. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Riverstone Communities, which is the management company for Orchard Grove. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about our passion for people, especially the people in our communities, which I think that you guys share. So 10 years ago, we were able to partner with a nonprofit called Path Project, and we were able to bring them into our communities, and they set up community buildings, which we give them free lot space on many times, and we contribute to them as well. And they're able to do English as a second language for people. They are able to do tutoring for children. They're able to do soccer programs, and they've brought up the graduation rate in our communities from in the single low teens up into the high 80s, which has been unbelievable. We just now this year, which is amazing, we're able to figure out how to recreate that, and we'll be bringing that to our community here at Orchard Grove, as well as all of the rest of our communities around the country. So we're very proud of the work that we do with that stuff, and I wanted to share that with you to let you know that that will be coming soon to our community there. And then quickly, too, you've met Elizabeth Juergens. She is my right-hand person here, and she wanted me to give you an update on our infrastructure as well. So we have had 2 shutoff valves that have been installed at our property so far. So if anybody is out of water, we can set the zones up so it won't infect the whole community. And we've also had the entire thing inspected, as well as preventative plans and completely mapped out. So we're excited that that's moving forward, and we have a clear plan with our contractor on what we need to do going forward.
Great. You go ahead.
Quick question about the mapping of the utilities that you did. Have you provided that to the city? Was there any kind of permitting or information exchange as part of that?
Our contractor would have done anything that he needed with the city, but no permitting was needed.
Okay, I think it would be very helpful if the city had the records of the maps that you've made, simply because it was a problem the last time, and so if there's backup or redundancy as far as what's available to the city contractors to look at when there's a line break or something, that would be very helpful.
Agreed, and hopefully we have that same thing going back and forth. There were some maps that the city had that weren't given to us last time either. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you speak to a concern was raised about damages during that incident? Can you refresh our memories on how you're handling that, or maybe if you care to respond to the issue of sewage backup?
I don't believe that the resident with the sewer issue backup today was, our resident. But when we had the issues, we did go in and we assessed everything, and we did help people clean up their homes and fix their utilities.
And cover their costs?
Yeah. And we put people in housing in the houses that needed to be fixed. We're a company that stands by our values to do the right thing.
I'm talking about the wrong bill.
That's okay. We're a company that stands behind doing the right thing. We stand behind our values.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Virginia, and then Tawny Payton.
Okay, good evening, council members. As a member of Orchard Grove neighborhood, I feel that it is within my purview to speak to you tonight regarding a few issues affecting mobile home residents in the communities. I want to make it clear that I speak for myself, having not consulted all the members of our group. First, I refer you to the report titled Manufactured Housing Strategy Potential Ordinance. Citation is number 4.1. And it says, owners are to provide regular on-site office hours by a manager. Orchard Grove has not had an on-site manager since well before our water and sewer issues or a crisis. Only temp managers sent from other properties that they own. Now, but I just talked to Sarah, who you just heard from downstairs. I just met her downstairs, and the situation is being resolved as we speak, so thank you, Sarah. Looking again at the report, 3.1, a minimum use lease, minimum term of lease. Some of us at Orchard Grove who have lived there before Riverstone bought the property have a month-to-month lease. It sounds like a disadvantage, but actually there's a distinct advantage to that, the type of lease, and it's valid because it's valid in perpetuity. Unless there is illegal activity by the resident or if there's non-payment of rent, and I'm looking at the city attorney, she's nodding at me. Therefore, our older leases furthermore, our older leases include water, garbage, and sewer, and are still valid. So some of us have that, and the newer residents have a newer lease that doesn't include that. Regarding the rent increases, I would like the owners to be accountable to the city in some way. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I also will send you an email. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nikhil. And after Nikhil, Amy, both. Oh, I'm not batting 1,000 tonight. Okay, sorry about that.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. My name is Tawny Payton. I'm here on behalf of the Rocky Mountain Home Association. We represent the entire industry, which includes not only the manufactured home communities, but also the manufacturers, retailers, lenders, et cetera. I would like to echo what Brad said when he acknowledged staff and their willingness to include the industry and the community owners in the study. We have been actively involved and have provided responses to the online survey. Unfortunately, we do not believe that any of our input was included in the strategy. As mentioned, Crystal had mentioned that House Bill 19-1309 passed this year during the legislative session. This program creates a dispute resolution program, which will help to address many of the issues that have been brought up by community residents. I feel that the community residents and the owners need an opportunity to utilize this program before implementing additional regulations and oversight at the local level. In addition, you all were talking about manufacturing facilities and bringing manufacturing back into Colorado, and I'm also excited to share that House Bill 19-1238 passed this year during session. That was our effort to encourage factories to come back to Colorado by giving them more flexibility in the codes that they are required to be built to. So hopefully we will welcome factories. There is a fairly new factory that is actually starting up down in the kind of I-70, I-25 corridor. So I'm encouraged by that, and I'm learning more about other factories that are interested in coming to Colorado. So I hope to be working with all of you to introduce the parties and get hopefully some factories back in Colorado. Do I have another minute?
We're trying to get people to finish their sentence.
Okay.
And then, but we have a question for you, so maybe that.
Well, I just, if you have an additional key thought, if you.
Okay, so and so one other thing that that is mentioned in the strategy is to promote manufactured housing and to develop new communities in Boulder. At some open houses that some of you have attended and that I've attended, there have been conversations around the fees specific to water and ways to reduce those fees so that the communities aren't assessed the higher rate because they have one big master meter. The items like that would help to reduce the just the operation costs. And also maybe a program of providing vacant land. I know there's opportunity zones. Is there a way to zone something MH to welcome a community investment, maybe creation of some sort? So I'll end on that note. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. All right, now Nikhil.
Thank you. Nikhil Menkeklo, Chair of the Human Relations Commission, and just want to lend support for some issues that have come up, not only at the Human Relations Commission meeting, but I've been attending HOA meetings and CMOB meetings with the mobile home communities since like 2015, 16. So just some top priorities that council should think of is, one, the need for a full-time employee in code enforcement to handle manufactured housing issues. As of now, the existing city employees do not have the capacity to take this on, and this issue has come up repeatedly at manufactured housing HOA and coalition meetings I've attended, and with the many discussions with residents and a friend of mine's in the park. We need, at the local level, an enforcement mechanism. So since 2015, we've been passing, good laws and ordinances, but if we don't have the means to enforce them, it's kind of all for naught. So as was mentioned at the state level, laws existed on the books, and in the past session with Edie Houghton Coalition and allies such as myself were able to get an enforcement mechanism passed. So the need for this position has come up and is quite a high need, and I understand we have a lot of unfunded needs in the city budget, but I believe that the community members that you see who came out tonight have a special need for the city and the council to protect them and enable this. Two additionally overwhelmingly infrastructure needs have come up, and the need to update and fix them. And I understand this is expensive, but this is a public health issue, and people need clean water and honest billing for water and utilities, and the enforcement mechanisms to enable this. One idea that came up is to tie lot rent increases to improvements in infrastructure in the parks. Let's see. And last year, the Human Relations Commission and City Council passed human rights ordinance protections against discrimination in housing for those paying with Section 8 affordable housing vouchers and based on citizenship status. Well, what's come up since then is I found that park residents, they need some kind of assistance and information in how to apply for and use Section 8 vouchers. I get a lot of questions coming to me if I can assist with this, and it's an unfamiliar new process to them, so just directing them to a website isn't cutting it. So I've been asking for the city to provide some kind of formal assistance to navigate this process to be made available to them. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Nikhil. Amy, and then Donna Lavani.
Good evening. My name is Amy Bove, and I am an attorney, and I specialize in the manufactured home business. I represent over 20 parks in the Front Range, so I deal with a great number of counties. Today, I'm here to represent Boulder Meadows. Glenn is not able to make it today, but he did want to offer just to thank you for allowing us to be part of the process. One of the things I can say is that Boulder has been the most open in terms of staff on hearing from stakeholders. Glenn and I have had significant meetings where we believe that we were heard, and I possibly even see some of those thoughts in the proposed ordinances. Boulder Meadows is proud to be in Boulder, and I think Boulder can be pretty proud of Boulder Meadows as well. We are committed to a long-term commitment within Boulder. We are the largest of all the parks and provide a considerable amount of housing that is needed here in Boulder, and we're glad to be part of the process. With that being said, and as a lawyer, one of the concerns I would like you guys to think about as we go forward with the ordinances is how does this ordinances work with the new amended Mobile Home Park Act and what may be coming next year. The gentleman who spoke before me was concerned about enforcement. That has been a concern across Colorado, and the new Mobile Home Park amended provision that is creating an AG, Attorney General area to monitor and to enforce is going to be started on May 1st, which was just spoken to. With that in mind, when we're creating these ordinances, which is on page 941 of 1084, please keep in mind of how this is also going to work. And one thing that Glenn from Boulder Meadows had offered at a meeting, and I would like to restate this, is he's even willing to borrow his resources, AKA me, some of the other lawyers. All I do is the Mobile Home Park Act. We'd be willing to share our resources with the city attorney in drafting the ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna. And after Donna, if Tom Crawley could be ready, that would be great.
Hi, I live in Boulder Meadows, and I've lived there for about 24-ish years, and I'm a senior citizen, and so I'm here to represent myself as a senior citizen and also other senior citizens living in Boulder Meadows, and maybe other mobile home parks as well. I'm sure you're aware that there are constant rent increases. And this year, we actually had 2, which we've never had before. So along with increasing expenses, not just in rent, but in general in Boulder, we're also experiencing diminishing resources. For example, the Longs Peak Mobile Home Repair Program, I was an applicant for that, and I was next in line to receive assistance, and it was canceled. I don't know when or if it's going to be renewed. Luckily, somebody from Care Connect helped me because I did have some issues with leaking roof and steps and other things. And he helped me, thank goodness. I also, because I live on a sort of very limited income as a senior, and I have physical problems, so I can't really work full-time. I can just do little odds and end jobs. I looked into receiving some kind of assistance. I heard about Section 8, and I found out that that program had like a 2-year wait list, and it's closed now. And I don't even know if it was ever available even to mobile home park residents. I'm not aware that it was. So as far as I know, there's no safety net for seniors, really. And I know that Boulder is committed to helping homeless people, and I hope they're committed to preventing people from becoming homeless as well, senior citizens in particular. Oh, and I did check into HUD, by the way, to see if I could get a reverse mortgage, and that's not extended to mobile home park, to mobile home owners. So if you can help us out with rent control maybe, or some kind of Section 8 for mobile home park residents, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Tom, and then Dory Glover.
Hello, am I allowed to ask a question?
We'll probably answer it at the end, though.
Okay. I'm curious about I purchased a home in the Orchard Grove community, and I am a believer in restoration, and I'm interested in the LEAP grants, and I understand that it's being operated through the city of Longmont, but I have not heard anything from it, so I'm very interested in upgrading and restoring. The mobile home I bought is produced in 1968, so an upgrade would be ideal.
Okay. I assume they have your contact information, and staff can get back to you with an answer on that.
An email, yes.
Okay.
Okay,
great.
thank you.
Thank you. Dory.
Hi, I live in Vista Village. I've lived there since 2016. And I have to say, and I'm also involved in the Colorado Coalition of Manufactured Home Owners and Residents Association, which we're trying to make changes across the state. I have to say that unfortunately, all of your efforts have not proved successful. The ordinances are not enforced, and the fear is tremendous. These people stand up and lie, and I'm banned from the office. I cannot come into my own office at Vista Village because I asked about rent increases. We are not, as an HOA, allowed to actually use our community building. The Section 8 that does get handed is not being accepted by our management. So every time you make some sort of effort to protect the vulnerable people that live in the parks, that it is completely undermined. I'm sorry to say that the efforts that you have put into this have not come to fruition. And it's very upsetting every single day. The fear, if I were, this is an unsubsidized housing. If I were secure in the knowledge that my house, that I wouldn't be evicted for no apparent good reason, I would invest in the sustainable kinds of energy efficiency, et cetera. But that would be insane for any of us to do that when we could be evicted at any time for no good reason. So please, please continue your support. It is absolutely essential. Thank you.
Thank you, Dory. Christian, and then Julie Van Domelen.
Good evening. Thank you for the time. Thank you for your efforts. I'm Christian Hendrickson. I'm a lawyer with Sherman and Howard, and we work with the Rocky Mountain Home Association you heard from Tawny earlier today. We do appreciate being involved in this process. We just want to reiterate that there are multiple sides to all these issues, and that as these issues are reviewed as we go forward, that the RMHA and industry concerns are considered as we look for workable, practical, and fair solutions to all involved. This is an important unsubsidized affordable housing type, but you have to remember the lack of subsidies goes both ways to the residents and the housing providers. We've talked about carrots and sticks. We're all about carrots. Carrots are things like rent subsidies for residents, rezoning, pushing on our friends at the county to also free up some space because they too have land that would work great. And candidly, I think we've all seen educational opportunities. Encourage residents to really come to the city, come to other providers to see what is out there for them in addition to, and candidly, instead of over-regulation of this industry. We appreciate the nod that rent control is precluded by state law. We note in the report $50,000 to $100,000 per home site to upgrade these facilities. So keep that in mind when you hear about these complaints about rent increases. Think about $50,000 to $100,000 per home site to make these improvements. We are concerned that this small sliver of housing is being looked at more closely than other parts of Boulder housing, where 2% or 2.3% look at how the other places are being regulated. Again, we focus on the need for data to see what's actually needed to be addressed instead of what just feels good or looks good to be addressed. We emphasize that state law has just changed and that you should see how that plays out before we put too much regulation on this industry. And we reiterate, we're here to work together, and we look forward to working with you on the specifics. Thank you.
Apparently we have a question.
Hey, Mr. Hendrickson, thank you for that. You noted the expense to upgrade some of the infrastructure or to take care of some of the infrastructure needs.
Yes.
And we've heard from the Orchard Grove management about some of the steps that they're taking, but I guess it would be helpful, I know you don't directly represent the different parks, but it would be helpful if we hear from other parks, if they're undertaking major infrastructure improvements, that would be helpful to hear about as we continue moving through this process.
And what those improvements are.
Certainly, we can pass that along to the members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Julie. and then James Feeney.
Hi, my name is Julie Van Domlin. I'm the Executive Director at EFA, the Emergency Family Assistance Association. I'm a City of Boulder resident, and I come tonight to first thank the council and staff for putting forth a mobile home strategy that seeks above all else to preserve and expand mobile home housing in Boulder, because this is the last reservoir of affordable market housing in the city. At EFA, we feel that we consider ourselves a significant stakeholder in this discussion. We support over $80,000 of rental assistance to residents in the last 12 months in our mobile home parks in the city. It's over 200 families. A lot of people come for food assistance and other programming around EFA. And when our food bank went underwater 2 weeks ago, we relocated at Boulder Meadows. Thank you, Boulder Meadows. So we do support very strongly the manufactured housing strategy. If you're waiting for a but, there is a little but, and that has to do with first do no harm and holding to that preserve and protect and expand objective. So we would encourage you to carefully evaluate the options in terms of its impact on affordability. To give you an example, in the guiding principle, the affordability says to remain no more expensive than the average for market rate rental housing. So that can't be the metric, because rental rate market housing is about $1,900 a month for apartments. The lot rentals are about $700 to $800, and a affordability principle for someone making low income would be about $600 a month. So there's very little headspace in raising expenses to mobile home park residents without displacing them. We'd also encourage you to continue to engage directly in your discussions with the mobile home park residents themselves. You've heard a lot tonight. They are the best way to take the temperature of what's really going on and what's really affecting their lives. And we offer to work very closely with you in preserving the ability to live in Boulder affordably. So thank you for your time.
Hey, Julie?
Yeah.
Are there
more? If you want, but yeah.
What else would you recommend? Well, I'm happy to hear more. I guess I'm also happy if you have specific ways you think the city could work with you to address specific needs. I guess I'd be curious to hear more about that.
Let me give you one example that we do, and that's we go door to door on tax liens against mobile home park owners, mobile home owners we've been able to, with the county assessor's office, prevent people losing their mobile homes because of tax liens. We have a program to go door to door, make sure people are aware, and help them financially to figure out how to get that bill paid, because that's a huge asset to lose. For very small, usually the average lien is about $250.
So you go to door in both the city and the county?
Yep. And we work with our partner agencies, but in the city of Boulder we do.
And so we could help you by...
No, I think there's a lot of things that we can do, but I think the concern is not to make it more costly to live in mobile homes while you're trying to do enforcement. I would suggest kind of adopting an investment strategy over an enforcement strategy. I think the unintended consequences of licensing and business permits we see in all kinds of things in the city, and I'm worried that translates, as much as you think you may be charging the owner or the company, most of those costs get passed on to the residents, and so just be careful. There should be some tracking what's actually going on with costs as these regulations and enforcement stuff get rolled out, and then invest in making those better communities. So.
Okay.
And we will be there to work on the human service side and prevent evictions. And legal aid is a big issue that we don't get too involved in. There's been some work at the state on eviction prevention and in the city, but certainly residents need legal support if they're facing eviction.
Okay. If you think of other specifics,
I'll send you.
Please send them over.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Julie, I have a quick question for you. Within EFA, do you conduct any kind of ordinance navigation?
No. Quite honestly, I think we'd refer someone to the city because we're not experts in ordinance navigation. We're experts in resource referrals. So that may be something we can work on. What are those, like, what would be a referral of EFA that would be effective to get support within the city on how to navigate ordinances?
Okay.
And we could follow up with you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks.
Oh, oops, we have a few more. Okay, James Feeney, are you here? Oh, there you are.
I'm James Feeney from North Boulder. I cannot stress enough the importance of City Council addressing to the characterization and regulation of land lease contracts in a mobile home park. If you do nothing else, do that. The City of Boulder must recognize the common law right of exclusive possession for land leased by tenants. A mobile home park is not an apartment building. Considering the need for shelter, that means not just a roof over your head, it also means the ground under your feet. Mobile home park tenants have already lost the financial competition for land ownership. All they have is this leasehold interest in a parcel of land. On a planet of over 37 billion acres of dry land, some people think they own the land, and some people are forced to pay rent to sleep on it. Let me illustrate for the City Council the direct consequence of the current poorly regulated mobile home park land lease contract. Firstly, the city manager wages a campaign of non-enforcement, refusing residents full protection under the law. There's a slide that lists over a dozen statutes and ordinances that are not enforced by city managers' officers. I can attest to that personally. And to put this another way, non-enforcement of the laws is no less racist than over-enforcement of the laws. Secondly, city attorney wages a silent campaign of terror in which mobile home park residents are forced to fend for themselves. While that characterization may seem excessively hyperbolic, look at the real and present consequences to residents who, whether realistically or delusionally, are too afraid to speak out for fear of retaliation by park operators and too afraid to exercise what rights they have otherwise granted by state statute. I know this because I have spoken with these people. With the ever-present threats of eviction, they tell me, don't speak out. You may get us in trouble. And yet these people are not wrong to fear when, for instance, city attorney continues to claim that property lines in mobile home parks do not exist. I have a slide of city's attorney's implied theory of co-tenancy, which fails. City attorney legal counsel also appears to contradict contract requirements of CRS 3812, the Mobile Home Park Act. Property description required, particularly A3, location of a space number upon which the mobile home is situate, which obviously presumes and requires understanding the specific metes and bounds of that location or space number. I request City Council, under the city's authority to regulate commerce, address the characterization of this mobile home park land lease contract.
Okay,
Boulder,
thanks. And whatever else you didn't get to say, please email us.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hondorf. I've lived at 4th and Alpine since 1976, except for 7 years in Florida. I wanted to talk about the traffic study for Alpine Balsam. I've been to a lot of the meetings. I haven't seen very many of you there, but I wish you would come. The staff, I think, is incorrect in the traffic study. It needs to be redone. I've conferred with Mr. Pomerantz about this. And here's a few.
So you know that this hearing is on another topic?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're talking about mobile homes.
Well, is there a traffic study done for them?
There are
I
other
just think you
issues.
need to know, if there is, the staff is making big mistakes.
Okay.
The company you hired to do the traffic study has made some mistakes. I have a marketing background degree. I've done surveys, statistics.
So
And here we go with somebody who just mentioned that you may put mobile home, not even, recreate a great environment for them on Iris, which was not considered in the traffic study for Alpine Balsam.
Okay. We're going to be having a hearing on Alpine Balsam on August 27th.
Well, we can't have a hearing if the traffic study is grossly mistaken.
Okay.
So I guess I'll send it in writing to Transportation?
That would be great.
Thank you, sorry.
And to the council.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we want to.
same.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Renee. And then Lynn.
Hi, Renee Hummel, Vista Village. I don't have a concise statement. I just have some comments on various things that were said tonight. First, I want to say I do think Vista Village is a good park. I do appreciate the work that Kathy and Lester do to, keep it nice and all that. Managing 300 homes is not an easy job. And at the same time, there are, dissatisfied residents, more than they know, I'm sure, because people will not speak up to them about issues because of fear of retaliation. In terms of the comment about evictions, 2 to 4 in the last 10 years, maybe that's true in actual evictions, but as we all know, people are forced out. They're threatened with eviction, then there are stipulations. You can move out in 60 days if you don't protest, otherwise you'll be out in 48 hours or whatever the new requirement is. In terms of what Christian Hendrickson said, he'd love to see rent subsidies for residents. Well, why don't they accept the housing choice vouchers, which we thought we were getting with that Human Relations Commission ordinance, but it's not being accepted in Vista Village currently, and perhaps that could be something to be looked at, clarifying in that ordinance that mobile home lots are subject to no discrimination on source of income, including housing choice vouchers. The comment regarding, from Brad Olson about being able to make comment on ordinances before first reading, I think is really good. I think we all should be able to do that. And also having some review after the fact. I'll be sending you some information about 8043 and sale of pre-HUD homes, which seems kind of questionable right now. Affordability, as you know, is a huge issue for residents, so I'm not sure what all can be done about that, but just want to reemphasize that. In my position, I hear that so much from people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, staff, on this. Thanks, everyone.
Good. Lynn?
Lynn Siegel, 538 Dewey. I think the first thing you need to do to affect affordability is not be giving subsidies to, like 5 different subsidies were given to the 311 project. The hospital, demolishing the hospital is just plain dumb, not okay. This is look at these mobile homes that we're talking about from 68 and earlier, maybe those need to be replaced. But that's a serious thing. We have a hospital. It's fabulous. It's facing south. I've seen the windows. It looks great. So you get some creative architects to figure out how to make it very livable. And that's what you do. You do not throw my tax dollars away with $16 million demolition and say you're trying to get affordable housing in Boulder and help out these mobile home people. That is just counterintuitive. It's not okay. Christian himself was talking about $50,000 to $100,000 upgrades. You're talking about condominiums to fill in the middle for our ballot measure that we're supposed to approve for you to float loans to bring up the middle. How about supplying the low and not stimulating the up with 311 and with Boulder Community Hospital demo? This is crazy. Or just the high intensity of the development there along that corridor and all the costs and all the impact fees we're going to have from transportation as a result of that demo and as a result of that extra burden on the north-south corridor of small north-south corridor of Broadway. And don't tell me it's off topic. It's right on.
Okay. I think that's the end of public comment. Great, thank you very much. Sorry. With that, I'm going to turn to staff. Did you want to speak at all to the Ponderosa issue since it came up? And I know a couple council members wanted to hear an update on the transportation situation at Ponderosa.
And the concern about legally binding.
Oh, sure. Sure, I'll briefly reply to some of the concerns that were brought up on Ponderosa. The Ponderosa annexation, this really isn't maybe the correct venue for that, and that will be coming to you in October. But still, I'll give a response to some of the things that
Well, you can tell people how to, just update everybody on where we are in the process and how they can access that process if they want.
Yeah, well, I think the people that spoke know exactly how to navigate the process because they're part of the process. Some of them are on the leadership team at Ponderosa. And we had a meeting with them last night about some of these issues, but other issues as well. I'll just hit a couple high notes. One of the concerns was about the monthly cost of moving into a home. And that's partly dependent on what the person's income is. If they have a higher income, it would be a higher cost because we'll have different AMI priced homes. The point is people at the lowest income, we need to have a housing cost which meets their needs. So the housing costs are typically going to be $800 a month and up. Depending on what their incomes are. What else?
Tina asked about the legally binding.
Oh, yeah, and then the other one was the a legally binding agreement allowing them to stay in the Ponderosa community. There's a few different ways that that's demonstrated. One was actually a city council resolution that you passed, I think a little over a year ago. Another is a letter that I've written to the residents describing that as well. And then we're also looking at a way that could possibly be captured in a new lease as well. And it's also in the resident guide, which is a document that they have that has all the sort of the answers and questions in it as well.
Okay, go ahead.
So Kurt, I had asked at CAC about the exit onto Broadway.
That's correct.
And have you addressed that yet? I just thought that it was an issue that got brought up here.
Sure. So the Ponderosa annexation process has intersected with an existing project under Public Works and Transportation for sort of the North Boulder area there. On Broadway. I think it's about the last 10 blocks or so of Broadway on the north side. That is a project that will be beginning in early 2020. And I believe it's a process that started around 2014, which shows that certain exits from the community onto Broadway will be eliminated as parcels are upgraded. For this particular exit, yourselves and Planning Board, when we were here about a year ago, gave us direction to try to keep that exit open onto Broadway. However, there's as part of this project, there's flood mitigation that's going on in that same location. Our engineers worked with their engineers to try to find a solution where we could keep the exit as well as complete the flood mitigation. There simply isn't enough land to do both. So in the annexation agreement that you will see in October, it shows exits out of Ponderosa in 4 different locations to the south and to the west as an alternative to that.
Okay, go ahead.
Kurt, I wanted to follow up on the pricing. So are you saying that no one is going to be priced out, none of the current residents are going to be priced out of Ponderosa?
That's correct.
So,
and if they stay in their current manufactured home, they would continue to rent as they're renting currently.
and again, just to reiterate, you said that there are means in which to stabilize their remaining there so
That's
that
correct.
there isn't any fear of displacement.
That's correct.
So it's here on record for the persons who are concerned about that And what would their recourse be if they felt that they were priced out or displaced because of costing?
Well, if they stay in their current mobile home, it would simply be their pad rent. That's really their only cost related to remaining in the community.
And, oh, go ahead. No, I was going to wrap this up.
Well, Kurt, I just encourage you all before annexation agreement hearings to continue to explore ways to kind of get in writing our combined response promise that people can stay in their mobile homes for as long as they want.
And the annex, you said it again, but this topic is coming back to us on when?
I think it's October 22nd.
Okay. And those things are always subject to change, so keep checking because...
And it will be coming to planning board, I think, on September 5th.
Okay. But it'll come to us sometime in October. So, okay. More broadly to the strategy, thoughts from council members? Lisa?
Could you explain, I thought recently we had agreed with the mobile home community owners that rent increases would be limited to one time a year? Maybe we didn't, or could you just expand upon that? And I've heard recently from residents at Boulder Meadows, and I think at Orchard Grove, that their rent has gone up 2 times this year.
So my understanding is that our city attorney has engaged with the manufactured home community owners, and I am not aware of that. So that could have happened, but I haven't been updated on that.
Right.
On any kind of stabilizing of rent.
Okay. Can I keep asking?
Yeah, although, are you going to ask about Section H vouchers?
Yeah. So could you speak to Section 8 vouchers? I thought that we had, at least at, I think it was at Vista Village, been able to have the owners there approve a Section 8 voucher. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So owners of manufactured home parks have to accept Section 8. They can't discriminate against that. One of the things that Crystal talked about earlier is putting a document together that every resident of a mobile home community would have to say, I'm having this problem, this is who I contact. And that's something that we're trying to put together to give an easier path for enforcement. I would ask that anyone that feels that they're having that concern now, that they contact us.
Okay. And then I know people are trying to address it, but I'm still concerned about some of the age of the infrastructure and the failing of the infrastructure. And I totally understand Ms. Simmons' concern about overloading that infrastructure, since it seems already somewhat overloaded. So I guess I'm curious, how are you going to move forward on addressing that? And I know at some point in this total conversation, we had talked about, would there be an ability to look at some of this infrastructure? We can't get onto their land, but the residents continue to have issues such as sewage in their homes. And
do you mind if I move to that slide?
No, I think it'd be great.
Okay. Oh, not there yet. It's the first one. So the two pathways would be establishing water and sewer standards. So that would allow us, we would set the standards, and a lot of standards are set for new construction, so these would be standards for existing communities. The next opportunity listed here is identifying code constraints. So maybe there was a request to get more information on what has been updated, but maybe there isn't an interest in by communities in this, and just trying to understand if there are barriers, and then have a conversation from there.
Can I ask you a question about standards? Don't we already have standards? Like, doesn't all infrastructure have to meet standards?
It does, however, as standards increase over time, and as these communities were built in the 1950s, they likely met the standards at that time. So unless they're, adding on to the park or, doing things that would require, permits for infrastructure, they're not required to upgrade at this point.
Okay.
And then somebody, it was, I think he's the chair of the HRC, Nikhil, he brought up the need to maybe have a full-time enforcement officer on our staff, and what would be the likelihood of doing something like that? And I want to pay attention to what Julie Von Domling had said too. I mean, I don't want to enforce so much that now we're causing these increases to the residents, but these are residents of Boulder, and so they should have exactly the same standards as any other resident of Boulder.
Right. So under the licensing and enforcement topic, the proposal is to try to understand, determine, or analyze what the workload is right now. And then, that there could be identified a need for part-time or full-time staffing. And then, of course, there would be a later proposal for that. As these ordinances are adopted, to try to really understand what the impacts are on our staffing and our ability to support those ordinances. And that really aligns with the accountability principle.
Well, I mean, I know, I think it was at Orchard Grove when they were having all their water outages, and then there's been some issues, and I will thank Riverstone for trying to address these and trying to stay on top of it. I think Elizabeth Juergens has really tried hard, but I don't know if it's been fully successful. And so what happens is that you have residents there being the eyes and ears and calling the city and then calling the county and our wonderful neighborhood liaison, and really trying to get somebody to address this concern. And I don't think it should be upon the residents to have to be the watchdog of their community. I mean, we all need to be watchdogs to some extent, but it just gets a little bit onerous, and I do have concern about individuals who are watchdogs being retaliated against for doing that. So anyway, and there was somebody here who did speak about Section 8 assistance, and she's a senior, and she talked about rent increases, and she was concerned about the safety net for seniors, and that at Boulder Meadows that she hasn't been able to seek or secure or whatever any kind of a Section 8 voucher. And I can't imagine going into your senior years and being so insecure in terms of where you're going to be able to live when you've been responsible your whole life and you've had this home, and now you're less able to afford it. Okay, so one other comment I will make is that I do think we have plenty of land for more mobile home parks, and I've said it before. We have this airport that is utilized by maybe 200 people, not all residents in the city of Boulder. That's 140 acres. And we did get it onto the Boulder Valley Comp Plan that we can consider that for other uses than just airport uses. And so I would really encourage you looking at this airport. It is out of the floodplain. It's a beautiful site. It would be a beautiful site for manufactured homes and for a resident-owned mobile home community so that we could do a rock-type community here in Boulder. And we own that property. And it's really not of worth to the city. It's not of worth to most people, and there's a much higher use for that land. I would likewise say, and Cindy brought it up a few weeks ago, that there was a property owner in Area 2 who has, I think, about 12 acres of land along J, and I would encourage you to reach out to Mr. Luna and see if there's some ability for us to at least start discussing land banking. And and that's all Area 2, and then I'll bring up the beloved Area 3, and there are some parcels in Area 3 that are right adjacent to developments right now that would love to participate and help on lower income and maybe mobile home type community, but I think there's lots of places to go, and so I wouldn't say we don't have many opportunities. I would say that we have a lot of opportunities, and as I mentioned earlier, we have our RRs and our REs and our RL zones that we could also look into and allow manufactured homes to occupy.
So I had a quick question, and then we have Aaron. My question is, somebody, I think a park owner or representative there talked about that we charge the park at the higher level of the water budget because they are considered one users. And as we look for ways to both incentivize kind of win-wins here, I'm just wondering whether in exchange for infrastructure upgrades or even meters at each, if we move to meters for each manufactured house, we couldn't help get to a lower rate. Anyhow, I'm just, again, looking at win-wins, and have you guys thought about that, or what am I not thinking about?
Yeah, we can certainly look into it.
Yeah, I mean, currently, from what I understand, they're actually at the lowest rate they could be because it's a rate for the whole community. It becomes more expensive when you meter individually. The water rate becomes more expensive. But there may be other ways to accomplish the same thing without changing to a separate city-type meter system.
And I think the mechanism for that would be the voluntary agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just, looking for win-wins here. All right, Aaron?
So I wanted to follow up on a point that Julie Van Domelen from EFA made, and it was about affordability. So I think it's very important that affordability is one of our key guiding principles, but she zoomed in on the language that the guiding principle says that the manufactured housing should remain no more expensive than the average for market rate rental housing. I thought she made a great point that that's probably too low of a bar, that we should seek to have it be no more than average market rate rental, because then you're not really affordable anymore. You're right there at the market rate. So, I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Or maybe, do you want to defend that language, or maybe could we change that language? Thoughts on changing it?
So I think it's a percentage increase. So it's not a dollar amount. So the market rates for a two-bedroom apartment are probably higher, much higher than they are for a two-bedroom manufactured home. And so we were trying to stick to that it wouldn't go higher than the percentage increase. Well, that stated we don't have.
Say that.
Okay, then maybe we need to clarify the language on that.
Because right now it just says no more expensive than the average for market rate rental housing, which sounds like an absolute number rather than a percentage number.
I would agree with that.
What page are you on?
This is in the guiding principles. I'm on page 889 of the packet.
Yep.
Yep.
So I mean, I think this is a great strategy.
Go ahead and speak to it.
All right, great. So moving into comments. Thank you for all of your work. I think this is a great step forward. Appreciate hearing from all the residents and hear deeply how much they care about their communities, how much they love their communities. And I see this as a great step forward in terms of helping them stay in their communities and allowing them to continue to thrive. So I look forward to adopting this tonight. I don't have any particular edits other than this one thing around the language and the affordability, which I think would benefit from a rewording, but I'm very enthusiastic.
Why don't you make that motion?
I move that we adopt the manufactured housing strategy.
Second.
And action plan. Subject to this one, do you want to work on that yourself and come back to us, or would you?
We could do that, yes.
Okay, great.
Great. Others who haven't spoken?
I just had some comments that regarding the public comment that I didn't get to make.
Right in.
So the code enforcement and code navigation, how that will work with the oversight legislation that was just passed, and to make sure that residents are clear on how that navigation and enforcement happens, because it sounds like there's still a lot of residents that either aren't aware or don't know how to lodge a complaint against an ordinance. So raising awareness, that's something that seems like is sorely needed. Again, to Julie Van Domlen's point about the unintended consequences of things like the upgrading the infrastructure and how that could affect. So just to remain cognizant as we move forward of those unintended consequences. And that's it. But I really appreciate all the work that you all put into it, and also understanding that a lot of the implementation will be part of future work plans for council to decide. And so, prioritizing what those should be would be helpful. So, thank you. Sam?
I'll just be brief. I thought this was a really nice piece of work. I thought it did a nice job of bringing together the background as well as the list of things that we need to be watching going forward as far as legislation goes and, ordinances that we might want to adopt. So I appreciate staff doing it, and I appreciate the mobile home community members being part of that process, and I encourage you to stay involved with it, because that prioritization that Mary just mentioned will be one of the important next steps. And so I thought it was a really nice piece of work, starting from guiding principles, and it followed our 9-step decision-making process fairly well. So I also appreciated, because we worked hard on both the public participation and kind of our decision-making steps. So I thought it was a nice job on that front too. Thank you.
I'm just going to ditto that and just add, let us know about legislation next year. I guess you have the sort of a prioritized plan, but I would think doing a mix of new ordinances or whatever if they're needed, but also just making sure people are being taken care of, kind of that mixes what I think we need, taking into account what Julie just said. In the end, we need to make sure people stay housed and get what they need while we look to kind of the longer term as well. So that nice mix that the next council is going to get to deal with. It seems to me that you might want to take this page of the strategy with kind of the timeline and make sure it makes it into the next council's thinking of their work plan, so that it becomes a working document.
Yep.
I do appreciate all the work that's gone onto it and the feedback, and we'll just keep trying to get it right. We are all in this together. Anything else?
So I just wanted to follow up on just what the point you were making about this being a working document. We've kind of talked at CAC about, as we hand off from phase 1s of projects to phase 2s of projects, that there will be kind of briefing packets around several different subjects for new council members. I think that's a fantastic idea. And so Zan's suggestion is perfect for this component of it. But I just wanted to mention to the full council that at CAC we've talked about trying to formalize some of the handoffs of some of the stuff that has phase 1s and phase 2s.
To the next council.
To the next council.
And I would just add to my colleagues' comments a big thank you. And this has been a lot of work. but I think it's been well worth the work, and I would just ask people to just stay involved, and while people try to diminish that you're a small population, a small slice of our population, you're a critical part of our community. So I just thank you for doing this, and truly look for more opportunities for mobile home parks. Thank you.
Okay, we have said all that we need to say? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the manufactured housing strategy and action plan with the caveat that was mentioned, or the amendment? Okay. All those in favor? It is unanimous. All right, thanks, everyone.
Okay, your next public hearing is a first reading and a motion to adopt as an emergency ordinance 8333 and resolution 153 regarding the BUMBA taxable certificates of participation.
And while we'll change over, we'll just note that for those of us who have an agenda, it's one hearing for both of those items together. It's going to take a minute. I'm going to get snacks.
I'm glad you're practicing presentation. Very clever.
While staff are getting settled, tonight's presentation will be led by Julia Richmond, the Chief Innovation and Technology Officer, as well as Kara Skinner, the Assistant Director for Finance. There will be a brief overview of just where we've been with broadband before we get into the financial aspect.
You should have it on your desktop. There you go. Thank you.
Sorry, we needed snacks. We need one more?
We need one more person.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Good evening, Council. I'm Julia Richmond, the city's Chief Innovation and Technology Officer. We're going to walk you through just a quick presentation on broadband to refresh your memories on where we are with the project and where we're going. And then we'll present the financial summary for financing the project and go through information on the certificates of participation. So if you recall, you set the guiding principles for the development of a broadband backbone, which are the following 6 things: citywide access, equitable, inclusive, future-oriented, creating a competitive marketplace, focusing on net neutrality, and creating a model that allows for open access. So we're continuing to follow those guiding principles as we build the strategy and then eventually the backbone. As a reminder why we're doing this, the backbone is the first step in building the future desired model of a city-owned or city-run ISP. We believe it's core connectivity and core infrastructure for the city, and it will serve as the base of technology for city and community operations going forward. And this is an essential part of future-proofing the city. This is a slide with tiny font, but where we are with the project is we're just entering 30% design, which means we've moved from the high-level design to detailed design. And our first meeting, internal meeting on that is tomorrow, actually. So we're meeting with you at a timely point in the project. And what that means is in the high-level design, we just talk about what streets it's on. And in the detailed design, we talk about what side of the street, in the hardscape, in the softscape, where the connections are, how the rings are laid out, and the like. We will then move quickly into 60% design, and we'll begin to issue the construction procurement documents in late to mid-September, and hopefully select a vendor mid-October or mid-November, between mid-October and November, and aiming to start construction December of this year. So that's all progressing forward nicely. As a reminder, the backbone model that we're looking at is about 55 miles of dark fiber backbone and about 10 miles of fiber laterals off of the backbone, which will connect high priority areas that we met with you to discuss in April. And that financial model that we reviewed in April, we've subsequently refined as a result of fielding work around the city, reviewing the city's existing conduit, and updating the cost model in the refinement of the backbone. The backbone cost estimate is currently running at $15.8 million. If you recall from 2 years ago when we started to review this with you, our estimate was at about $15 million, so we're pretty close to the estimate that we started with. A couple of good news updates from the last time we met. When we met in April, we had talked about how we could reuse the city's existing conduit. And at that time, we had begun the process and we're having pretty bad luck with looking at our existing conduit. Since that time, we finished that work, and it actually turns out that we can use a significant amount of existing conduit, which saved us about $1.5 million. So that's great news and brought the cost down. So good news on that side. And then one note on the proofing for the existing conduit, that line item there will actually be less. We're waiting for the final invoice, and we've spent probably $40,000 or $50,000 versus $170,000. Then the second table you see on this slide refers to the additional investment in laterals that we talked with you and got approval for in April. And just to remind you what that is, it's sort of the difference between the highway and a side road, or the highway and Broadway. And the laterals will help the city to connect with a number of high priority areas. So just to refresh your memory, the design will go, will touch about 160 signals in the city. And so we'll be able to connect the traffic signals in the city with fiber laterals, which will allow us to advance a lot of the transportation goals that are in the recently discussed transportation master plan. We will connect about 20 affordable housing sites managed and partnering with BHP. We have gotten a couple of laterals to RTD sites, and one of the follow-ups from council at that time was to ask RTD to pay for that. And what you see there is a cost reflected, and the point where we've gotten to now is that RTD actually has really valuable fiber that runs along 36 that will be important to our fiber infrastructure as well. And so we're going to end up doing a fiber swap with them. And so that isn't reflected there, but that's the net cost for the construction. We'll connect the public safety towers for the radio system in the city, and then of course the new library site. So all told, that is our estimates are at about $18.5 million. This includes a 20% contingency that is reflected in the primary backbone build cost as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kara.
Thank you. Kara Skinner, Assistant Director of Finance. The item that's before you tonight is actually requesting approval of the project financing. And what is proposed is taxable certificates of participation. And we're proposing taxable because of the proposed use of the proceeds, and we need flexibility. COPs are a form of lease purchase financing between the city and BUMPA, or people know it as BUMPA, Boulder Municipal Property Authority. And COP investors are actually buying an interest or a share in the annual rental payments that the city makes to BUMPA for the leased property. So while there's no direct city revenue pledge, the COPs are secured by collateral, and the collateral that we're proposing for this financing is the municipal building that we are in this evening, and the land under it, and the atrium building and its land. This type of financing is subject to annual appropriation, so it's not considered a multiple-year fiscal obligation under Tabor. And the ordinance and the resolution before you tonight are such that you'll be approving the financing per certain parameters. And those parameters are that we will issue $20 million. The maximum annual rental payments will be less than $1.6 million. Currently, the financial advisor believes those maximum annual rental payments will be about $1.4 million. The market may shift a little bit between now and closing or sale. And then the term is less than 20 years, although we're anticipating a 20-year term. And then the true interest cost needs to be less than 5%. And again, the financial advisor at this time is anticipating the true interest cost to be approximately 3.5%. Might go up and down between now and then. So assuming that the ordinance and the resolution is approved tonight, the next steps would be for us to have our ratings presentation on August 15th, and that will be with Moody's. The financial advisor has recommended we only need one rating for this issuance. And then on September 10th, we will have the competitive sale, and then the closing and the receipt of proceeds would be on September 26th. So with that, we do have a number of motions. The first would be essentially a motion to approve the financing to not to exceed $20 million to fund the backbone of the project as described by Julia, and to approve other financing documents. And that's the emergency resolution that you would approve as City Council. And then you would adjourn as a City Council and convene as the Board of Directors of BUMPA. And then again, motion to approve the financing. And then again, adjourning as the Board of Directors and reconvening as the Boulder City Council. So with that, if you have any questions.
So sorry. Bob.
Julia, on the ladders that go to the 20 BHP properties, who's going to serve as the ISP for those residents? Is that fiber going to be sold to or leased to a ISP, or how are they going to get connectivity?
So the current model that we're working through, and we don't have formal agreements, but this is in the discussion phase with BHP, is that we'll provide fiber to the site, and then they will provide public Wi-Fi, basically, in the building. So we'll light the fiber using the Front Range Gigapop, which is the city's ISP, and then basically create a free public Wi-Fi model in each of those facilities. And that'll be an interim approach. That's obviously not the most commercially viable approach, but we believe it'll improve access in all of those sites. And the idea is that the city would provide services up to the building, and then BHP would provide services within the buildings.
That's great. And then I can't remember from April, did we look at doing something similar with the mobile home parks?
So we're meeting with the Ponderosa team tomorrow to make sure that we can run laterals as part of the plan you just discussed. Mm-hmm. And we have not spoken with the other manufactured homeowners in the community. Obviously, the ones that are owned separately are a different prospect.
Have you tried to price out what those laterals are on those four parks?
Not at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Mary?
That was going to be my question, and regarding the equitable access, and the parks or the mobile home communities are pretty important. So.
Agree.
Thank you.
Cindy?
Are we doing this together? I have a question about some of the descriptions, and I'm not sure if we have to be adjourned to go into the other phase with the preliminary official statement, attachment E.
Mm-hmm. We're having a joint hearing on both. It's
Okay.
just for approval that we have to do that.
So the question is, on page 658, you give a description of the city and the governing body, and you talk about the name and the office, the number of years of service, the principal occupation of the council members, and some of those are incorrect. Do they have to be correct in order for this to be valid? And how would those corrections be made? And then also just it talks about the governing body, and then it goes into administrative personnel. And the first sentence is, the council consists of 9 members selected for staggered 4- and 2-year terms. And then the second one goes into the actual city administration. So this is really kind of not very cohesive. And there are parts that are incorrect and that have to do with the city charter. and where it stands now and where it has stood before.
What page?
So this is page 658.
Yeah, Cindy, that's definitely correct. My years of service is wrong. They do have the expiration for the right time, but
Yes, and also saying things like, I don't understand why it says, on November 2nd, 1999, voters approved an amendment to the city's charter removing term limits for council members. I think that's just the opposite of what has happened in 1999. Doesn't seem to be very pertinent here in terms of how we are actually governing this city now. So, I mean, I can go through these things, but I could also just send them in, or what? I don't know what.
Sounds,
Where did you get your information in terms of our terms?
that new intern, no.
I think that these documents are assembled by a financing team, bond counsel. We have new financial advisors, and so possibly, you know, it's a learning curve for the new financial advisors. But these are preliminary documents, and Aaron may also want to speak to this, but what you're approving tonight is these documents in substantially the same form, and we can still make changes to them and correct these mistakes before the official statement, or even the preliminary official statement is posted. So we will definitely make a thorough review.
Okay.
It's like you're 2 years off.
Or more.
I think they may have carried over error information from a previous issuance, and so that may be the issue.
So we'll make
And
sure
then,
that
like,
those are corrected.
Cindy's been here twice, so.
We'll make sure that they're corrected. And again, these documents are being approved in substantially the same form. There will still be other things amended in the preliminary official statement. That is a working document that we are working on and reviewing up until the sale.
I think we need to honor Cindy with an honorary law degree tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, I'll accept.
And maybe, like, are you not sleeping? Because this is some minutia. Wow.
I'm actually not a retired teacher, but I do have some editorial background. Yeah.
I'm impressed. Aaron?
Yeah, kudos for the detail, picking up the details. So just on the, how much we're paying going forward, so it's approximately $1.4 million annual payments, and those are just being incorporated in our annual budgets out of the general fund, correct?
That's correct.
And so it's just a new line item in the budget.
Correct.
That we just have room for.
Correct. It's programmed out of the general fund in the general fund capital, which council had established a couple of years ago.
Oh, so it'll be in that line item of
Correct.
however much a year that are.
Correct.
Program.
So you'll see that when the council is presented with the budget this year.
Thanks. And just what was the number of BHP facilities we're connecting to? I didn't.
About 20.
About 20. Great. Thank you.
Right now? Go ahead. Mirabai wants to ask something.
I'm sorry, I don't know if this is quite pertaining to the topic we're on, but just, we're talking about the backbone leading into the BHP affordable housing units, as well as hopefully into our mobile home parks. But just for residents who are listening right now and interested in how individual households are going to get this, can you guys just speak to that for just a few minutes on when the feasibility, all that?
So at this time, the only plan that we have is for the backbone. The difference in cost between building the backbone and getting to a full ISP is about $120 million. And at the time we met with council to pick this option, there wasn't financing available for that. So council at any time has the option to figure out how to pay for that. But for now, we're focusing on making sure that the backbone is optimized. And then when you're ready, we can start to make the next plan.
Great, thanks. I know a lot of people are excited about this, and so I wanted to make sure that they knew that, yeah.
Yep, not yet.
And if I can add to that this is a very important step that the council is making. And this is a step that many communities who do have community broadband, this is the first step into that conversation that you're referring to, Mirabai, and the conversation of, is the city the ISP, or is there a partnership that's formed?
And this doesn't preclude either option.
Correct.
Lisa?
So I had a question about the collateral that we're using to secure this. And we've picked the municipal building where we sit right now and our land. as well as the atrium building. I find that interesting. But
You want to know if they default,
wanna
does it
know
get
how
us out
you-
of council meetings?
No, I want to know how you decided those buildings, and given some of our plans, these buildings aren't going to be here maybe in 20 years, so what do you do about that?
Well, we did look at the possibilities across the city, and the financial advisor did advise that we use facilities that are considered essential for core municipal services. So like we considered some recreation centers possibly, but they said that it would be better collateral if we used the municipal building and the atrium building. So they actually thought that these were good sources of collateral. Some buildings are already encumbered by the COPs that were issued in 2015. And then there are other buildings that the city has that don't seem like such good candidates for a variety of reasons, and maybe Tanya would speak to that.
All right, and if you could address my question about 20 years, 5 years from now? I mean,
So the reason the parks facilities were not chosen is because the future capital needs that Parks has and the need to reserve those for potential COPs, for example, reinvestment in one of the community centers, for example. If the council makes a decision on the two assets, this building or the atrium, then we would have the opportunity to relook at this financing, and then the debt would have to, in essence, be renewed.
Isn't it both buildings?
Both buildings, yep. But, so let's say there's a decision hypothetically on the atrium. That would be the call to action to revise this action and look at other COPs.
And what will this bring, what will be our total COP's debt that this will bring us to? I mean, because and I've made this comment before, but we never started doing this until really recently. And this makes me really uncomfortable because you just talked about, if we want to, revamp our rec centers, we can use COPs on those. And I'm very nervous doing this because this is putting us in debt. This is putting us in our assets in debt. And can somebody, it's like 50, how much do we have today in COP debt?
So at the end of 2018, the principal outstanding on the existing COPs was $37 million.
And so this is now 20 more.
Correct.
And so now we're moving it up to 57 million.
Correct.
Yeah.
I had two questions, or one question. No, two. One is, here to date, we've been opportunistic about laying down fiber whenever we had to rip up the road for something else. Starting in December, we're going to move from being opportunistic to actually going under construction. And then you've probably already said this, but can you remind the public how long that will take?
We expect construction to take 2 years. And part of the next phase of the project that we're in right now, before we begin construction, is optimizing the design based on what we know of other projects happening in the city. So we can also be opportunistic in that, where if a part of the street is ripped up or another project, we can put the backbone assets in there at the same time. So, some of the work that's happening on Broadway, we'll do that. We know of other firms that are, with plans in the city to do other fiber projects and things like that. So we'll base our design schedule on construction that we know of so that we can, A, reduce the impacts to the community, and B, reduce our costs.
Okay.
And can I follow up on that? Just
Everybody wants in on this. Okay, I have another question. Everybody has another question, but you can jump in on this one.
Mine follows up on yours as well. Well, it has to do with the building.
Okay.
And mine has to do with tearing up the street and laying
Okay,
down.
do that one, and then we'll go back to the buildings, and then we'll go back.
So will you be, given that we've been working on municipalization for some time, will you be looking at taking opportunities to put whatever infrastructure you might need for future municipalization efforts?
So the municipalization team is a part of the broadband team, and we work really closely with them. If you recall from our council meeting last, I think, January timeframe, we looked at optimizing the cost and putting in municipalization assets, energy assets at the same time, and it saved a little bit of money, but it was so prospective that it created additional financial risks. So while we are optimizing the design based on the need of the muni in the future, we will not likely be putting assets in the ground as part of the construction project.
So when the muni comes around, you'd be digging up again, correct?
That's right.
So
Not for the core backbone, but for fiber to the home.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the backbone, just the core backbone.
The core backbone should serve both functions.
Okay.
Can I just follow up on that too?
Sure. Cindy wants in on this too.
Yeah, is it a true statement that that the construction of the backbone won't always necessitate digging up streets? That you might be able to put it in the right-of-way outside of the street itself, so you wouldn't always have to dig up a street?
That's right.
Yeah, so because I think we'll see a lot of the construction will be lower impact.
Right, in the softscape. Or,
yeah.
Okay, we have Cindy, then we're going to Mirabai.
So, so mine follows onto Zan's and Lisa's and Aaron's, which is, I'm looking at the map of where the fiber is supposed to go, the backbone, and it goes up 119, and then it looks as though you just go cross-country from 119.
Which page are you on?
Well, I don't know what page it is. It's the one the map is on.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
And so the backbone goes up 119 to somewhere around, it looks like Settlers Park or that area, and then it cuts over to Sunshine Canyon Drive and comes back down Sunshine Canyon Drive, and then it continues up 4th Street. I'm wondering why that route was particularly chosen, and if that has, I mean, because there you're digging into practically the red rocks.
We actually have conduit already in that location.
Is that
so
right?
we've optimized based on that.
And how was that, for what was that put in?
That'll be our, I don't know the answer to that, but it was put in a.
Couldn't that be where they just laid the new pipe?
I think that's right.
The new pipe did, I think that is right.
Yeah.
But that just happened, so that was city, right?
Yeah, it's existing
Having to do with
conduit.
Knollwood, probably, annexation, possibly.
I'm not sure.
But at any rate, I was just wondering, that looks opportunistic as well, the way that it goes, but it also goes by the new 311 site, or the old 311 site.
Okay, Mirabai had a question.
I'm jumping back to Lisa's stuff with COPs, and I don't know if you guys have this or could possibly get it, but do you have any data on other cities of similar budget size of how much COPs they tend to have issued?
So I will say it is a very common form of financing in the state of Colorado, particularly for facilities. So I don't have that off the top of my head, but I would say that it is very common of cities of our size to have certificates of participation. And
But quantity-wise, I mean, because we're looking at 37 all the way to now 57.
I don't have that in my back pocket, but I do know of some cities that might have up to $100 to $200 million of COPs.
Okay.
If I could just
Are you
jump on
jumping in on this?
Mirabai's question, but we only started doing these recently, so how is it a common practice if we only started doing them recently? Did everybody else only start doing them recently too?
I can try to answer that a little bit. I think because it's the way around Tabor. So some municipalities may have jumped on that bandwagon earlier, but since Tabor's been introduced, this has been the way to have something that's not debt that is subject to Tabor. So I believe it has become more common in Colorado, even though we may be relatively new to it.
Yeah, I mean, but Tabor was like 1991 or something like that, and in my recollection, we only started doing this like 5 or 6 years ago.
It has been used by, I know, a number of cities across Colorado for some time.
It would be good to have more complete information.
And Could I speak a little bit more to the collateral? The other thing to note is that the buildings get released as we pay down principal. And so the first building scheduled to be released is the atrium building, but we can always swap out collateral anytime during the term of the COPs. So if we wanted to substitute a different building for one of the two currently proposed buildings to be pledged, we can do that.
Great, thank you for that. Bob, and then coming back to me.
So my question probably parlays off of that on financing. Mirabai asked a good question before about this leaves our flexibility options open to either run an ISP ourselves or to maybe sell some or all of this fiber to somebody else who might run an ISP later down the road. If that second thing happened, if somebody came to us and said, geez, we'd really like to run an ISP, we'll invest the money, but you guys have some really sweet fiber here, you spent $20 million on it, we'd like to buy it from you for whatever that number is. I assume, Kara, that we can pay down debt. Is there any prepayment penalty if someone dumped $20 million in our lap? Could we go back to the COP holders and pay off some or all of that debt at our discretion?
I believe there's a time.
Sometimes there's a lockup period for a few years and then.
Let me double check that for a moment. And
okay,
then I'll
thanks.
Okay, one more question for me, and that just is, maybe this is an obvious question, but I just want to make sure I understand. In the social impacts on page 504, we talk about this fiber project is going to be an early participant and involved in the racial equity instrument that the city is now adopting through our work with the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. Does that mean we're going to go to Boulder Housing Partner Projects? Is that what we're talking about? Or what does that mean?
So the broadband project is actually tying together a number of different initiatives that the city is working on, and the racial equity project is part of that, or program is part of that. So we're working with a partner at the Harvard Kennedy School through our What Works Cities program. The City of Boulder is a What Works City, and Harvard is giving us some resources to help improve our procurement processes, focusing on the equity lens. So in this, we are looking at new ways of engaging the vendor community around the broadband construction project to try and improve the diversity and inclusiveness with which we are engaging vendors. So we're planning on having potentially more meetings before the RFP is released to make sure that a broader audience is engaged in this work and understand the construction that we're looking to bid out. We're trying to change some of the language that we use in our standard templates such that it is available and accessible to more and different types of people in this construction community, and looking at different sort of procurement models for how we do that, such that we're not just working with this typical players, and instead, sort of looking at additional options for vendors.
That's really helpful. I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I think that would be something that would be worth letting us know how it goes.
For sure.
As our first instrument. Yep. Okay, with that, shall we turn to the public hearing?
Good question.
Oh, go ahead.
So can I just add to that? We will include updates in our quarterly racial equity updates that council receives as part of the IP. A little context on the procurement. Before entering into the contractual relationship with GARE this year, under the guidance from our two council members who serve on the subcommittee, the Guiding Coalition, GARE interviewed approximately 20 community members, and procurement was one area that the community members expressed desire for the city to look at through a racial equity lens. And so we're following through on that feedback that we've received with this project. This will be the first project that we will be truly testing the racial equity instrument, and so that's where the follow-up to council and the community will be important in this space.
Great, thank you for that.
Yes, so optional redemption after 10 years. And then I just also want to take the opportunity to remind you that this is an emergency ordinance that we're proposing, so the one reading.
Wait. Sorry, I didn't hear that. Go ahead.
So just to go back to the issue of where the fiber is going to be put in the backbone, will we be able to leverage the brand network conduit that's in place?
I don't think that we're using any brand conduit. It's not necessarily owned by the city, and so the conduit that we're reusing is just city-owned conduit. And I'm looking at Tim Scott, our consultant. Is that correct? Okay.
Is there an opportunity to leverage what brand put in? Because my recollection of when that went in is they overbuilt capacity. I don't know if it was conduit or just dark fiber capacity, but it certainly seems like that would be one way to avoid digging up anything in certain parts of the city where pretty core.
We have, and it's not necessarily something that that they're interested in. So.
Okay. We have a public hearing. You each get 3 minutes. Carolyn, can you come on up? If you can start with your name and address, that would be great.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Carolyn Beninsky, and I live at 273 Lion Point in Boulder, and in Boulder County, but I'm moving to Boulder, back to Boulder next month. And I'm here tonight representing Boulder 5G Action, and recently we were talking to you about the dangers of 5G and the preemption of 5G and the loss of local control through some of the state legislation and FCC rulings. And we want to thank you for pursuing a fiber optics municipal broadband infrastructure here in Boulder. We believe that wired internet is a safe alternative to wireless systems and are particularly important right now given that we are going to be, 5G is going to be using parts of the electromagnetic spectrum that is particularly dangerous from what we understand. And we also believe that broadband, municipal broadband wired will be able to provide much more security against hackers and surveillance. It will be healthier for the residents. It will allow the city folks rather than the industry to make decisions about what we want here, just like with the XL. And also, as you know, I think wireless uses a lot more energy than wired systems, and we'll have, if we have wired, it will have a positive impact on Boulder's energy goals. So there's a lot of benefits from this. We don't really have much to say about this financing mechanism because really, truly, we don't know anything. I don't know anything about it, and we didn't talk about it. I do wish we could take some of the money from the Pentagon and put it into municipal broadband. I think that would be a really good use, especially in Boulder. And we look forward to working with you over the next year to reverse the preemption of local control over wireless, 5G wireless, by repealing Colorado 1193. And also we would like to help other cities who are trying to create local broadband by supporting them and reversing SB 152, which said that there had to be a vote of the people to have broadband, which we already did, but some cities can't afford it. So those are some things we can be looking forward at the state legislature. And thank you again for all your efforts and really making this network something that the citizens control rather than big telecom. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. You?
Greetings, everybody. Thank you for being here and holding this public hearing. My name is Yu, Y-O-U legally, Yuma nickname. And everything that Carolyn Beninsky just said, I ditto. I don't need to spend time going through the same information again that she's just given to you as far as the support that we are really encouraging. You keep moving forward with this wiring broadband, bring it into the cities. control. We don't need to have the telecom industry, wireless industry controlling things in this realm. And as far as the finances go, it's beyond me. It's over here. But thank you very much, and keep proceeding, and I'll keep aware of how it's going, and you'll see me again. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, you. All right, Lynn.
Lynn Siegel, 538 Dewey. I don't think we need the Pentagon. I think we need W.W. Reynolds, Stephen Tebow, some of the developers in town that are causing our housing crisis here. And I think they need impact fees, and I think you need to figure out how to do impact fees to each development towards the public broadband and the digging of the dark fiber. So let the people that we're, we have a deficit so much. We never have enough for affordable housing, and we never have enough to have to own our own broadband. We have to partnership with people. No, we don't. We can do fine on our own. We need to charge the people that are causing the problem in the first place. I applaud you for doing the dark fiber and for getting it online, and I'm completely opposed to 5G. And I heard some of the production from Julia last time and the other guy that showed the spectrum is really broad, and we aren't going to use 5G anyway where it's dangerous. We're going to use it in the lower level parts of the spectrum. I'm not an expert in this. I'm in the life sciences. But to me, that unknown of the high end of the spectrum for 5G it's kind of a slippery slope. If we allow 5G anywhere at, South Boulder Park, where, the Verizon thing, then we've got the slippery slope where we could get to 5G. So I'm opposed to any kind of 5G thing in any way. And let's just get our fiber laid, and then we've still got our cell phones if we want. So it's good to go, and thanks for supporting the dark fiber network, the backbone.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah, thanks. And to everywhere, of course, it's gonna, and to the lower able populations.
Okay.
Yeah.
James.
I wanted to raise the question, because I don't know the answer, to when it becomes appropriate to spend a little more money to run a utility chase when you have to dig up for anything. And I don't know to what extent there might be other utilities that could share a utility chase, but I know that in some communities where I grew up back east, there's very old infrastructure that's, in some cases, never been upgraded, and so they end up digging up and burying and digging up and burying and digging up and burying. So I'm just curious if there's been any examination of the opportunity to run a utility chase that could be used for multiple purposes. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing. Bob.
I'll just make do you want me to make the motion?
Sure.
Okay. So this is a city council motion first? Okay. Can I just say, I move what's on the screen? Is that good enough for the lawyers?
Yes, we have that on the record.
Okay, that's what I move.
A second.
So just, I guess I'd make a request. First of all, this is great work. I remember in August or September 2015, sitting in the back room as a city council candidate, watching a presentation, I think it was before you were here, Julia, of what this could possibly be. So I feel like this is a landmark, this is a milestone. And so thanks for all the hard work to you and your team over the last 4 years to getting us to finally a place where we're gonna actually start installing fiber. And I know it's not, Premier By's point, it's not exactly all the way to where we'd like to be, but it certainly is a good first step, a good first phase one. The request I'd make, Julia, is is I know that you've had some pleasant surprise here on the use of the conduit, and I imagine you've had some contingencies built in here, so you got hopefully a little headroom, and I know we're borrowing a little bit more money than we actually need. My request is if at some point in time you could investigate what it would cost to build laterals to our mobile home parks and do the same arrangement as we are with BHP, where we, through our ISP, put up Wi-Fi that's accessible to our neighborhoods. That maybe that's phase 1B for you, and you can come back to us at some point in time and say it's going to cost X $100,000. I imagine it's going to be in hundreds of thousands and not the millions. And if you could come back to us and let us know, and if it fits within the envelope of the financing we're authorizing tonight, that would be really great.
Does that reflect everyone's sentiment, by the way? Everybody?
Absolutely, especially when you think of, my understanding is the average rate of people connected to the internet in mobile home parks is like 15%. And so that puts the people there at a big disadvantage, and especially the children who increasingly are dependent on computers and the internet.
Great.
Sam?
Just one note on that. So one of the benefits of Ponderosa is that we can build fiber into the neighborhood, and the difference with the other communities is that we could build fiber to the community, but maybe not in it, and that's a whole separate negotiation. But I just want to ask a clarifying question. If we fit within the envelope, do you want me to come back for approval or just add it to our plan?
I'd be happy to add it to the plan. You might make it, I'm just speaking for myself, it might be an information point. You might just let us know where you're doing it and how much it costs. But from my perspective, I'd be happy to give you authority tonight to do the laterals if it fits within the financing envelope you have. I don't know how others feel about that.
Yeah.
Can I just make a point or question? Cindy, do you want to go first?
I have a comment on this.
Okay, and then Sam's next.
So I support that. Just keep in mind that, like with a BHP apartment building, you can build to one place and then have wireless serve probably the whole building, or they can do a little bit internally. Just with like Boulder Meadows is a very large place, right? So I agree with that, but just not to set false expectations that suddenly everyone will have internet within the mobile home parks if we build a lateral to one entrance. Yeah. So worth doing. You focus it on the community centers probably, and hopefully it can penetrate a little bit further, but just don't want to be unrealistic.
Okay. Go ahead.
And again, looking at this 119, if it had been on Pearl Street, it would have gone right by Glen Willow, which is affordable housing, low-income housing that's been there forever. And there isn't that much going up Canyon. So I would just point out that where it's feasible, that those things are done. And I wish I'd been able to draw the map. It's my regret. Yeah.
Sam.
So on the idea of Boulder Meadows, if you pull a lateral and then you do, for instance, an Omni antenna and have other, there are ways to do that kind of last mile kind of access, so that if you have the fiber that comes to the edge of the property, there are various approaches you can take to get people wireless. And I think that would be in the scope of what we're talking about, right? So the lateral to the edge of the park, and then whatever it takes to get access to people within the park. So that's how I would say it. I think this was great. Thank you for teeing it up so nicely and making it so clear, and what the budget is going for and what we're going to get. I think when we talked about this, when we decided to move forward with it, the phrase we used was no regrets. And this is one of those no regret steps that keeps our optionality fully open as to what we do going forward for business arrangements for the Muni broadband. So thank you.
And yes to that. I know it took us a while to get here, but I think it's a very good place to be. And thank you for also using this as an instrument to advance other city goals like our procurement equity. Okay, shall we vote?
Could we have a second first?
I seconded.
Oh, sorry, okay. Okay, it's a roll call vote. We start with Councilmember Weaver.
Aye.
Yates?
Aye.
Young?
Yes.
Brockett?
Aye.
Carlisle?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Morzell?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Yay.
Still another motion.
No, we gotta do the next bit.
And now we have to reconvene.
Do we have to have
As-
3 separate votes, or
It's one motion.
can I make this one?
Yes.
I'll move what's on the screen.
Second.
Wow, I like how you did that.
Yeah, and this is a very exciting project, by the way. Yeah, great step forward.
So I seconded too.
That can be show of hands.
All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Woo.
Okay.
Okay, your final item tonight, discussion of a not of 5 regarding lifting the medium-density overlay zone in a small section of University Hill.
So just, Chris Meschuk is going to talk to us about this, but if I could just say a little bit, because I asked for this not of 5. It's in particular about one parcel up on the hill which had a duplex that burnt down, and somebody bought the property with the intention to build a triplex there, which fits with the medium-density zoning of the district. And upon trying to pull a permit, discovered that there was this medium-density overlay zone that allowed nothing other than single-family homes to be built in this 6-block region of the University Hill. So just that, knowing that we've been talking a lot about trying to look for alternatives to very large single-family homes, which is apparently the only thing that's allowed because of this overlay zone, I just thought I'd bring forward to see if we could find an alternative to that, 6,000 or 7,000 square foot home, which is the sort of by right allowed thing here.
Are there any
What?
maps?
Yeah, and this Chris is going to.
Yeah, I thought it would be helpful for us to put together some maps. So after the intro from Aaron, thank you. Tonight is really to talk about the medium density overlay zone. What I thought would be helpful first is to just explain a little bit of what is this overlay zone and why do we have it. As we described in the short packet materials, the medium density overlay zone was created in 1995. And as you can see, it was actually in several areas surrounding downtown. It's really the dark solid areas on the map. So you can see the Whittier neighborhood is included in the overlay zone, areas of Grandview, as well as University Hill down at the bottom part of the map. And it was really created after a development moratorium. And it was in the context of, if you remember, kind of the early 1990s, we were going through the integrated planning project, kind of what's best for what's left in Boulder. And we had upzoned a whole bunch of neighborhoods in the 1970s around the downtown core. That's where House Behind the House came from, if you've heard of that. In the early 90s, we were hearing lots of concern from residents about the character of their neighborhoods changing. So this was a tool we used in our toolbox to address those concerns. Then in 1997, we did a comprehensive rezoning in a whole bunch of areas of the city. And at that time, we then changed the zoning in the Whittier neighborhood and several others that are circled here on the map. And when we revised that zoning, we essentially locked in a lot of what the tools of this overlay zone were. And so we revised the overlay zone. So when you see the overlay zone today, it really is limited to 4 areas of town, all limited in the RM2 zoning district. So at the top of the map, you can see that's kind of near Casey Middle School. And then you can see in the middle of the map, that's Grandview Terrace. And then in the bottom of the map is the University Hill area, which is the subject of our conversation for tonight. If we zoom into that, just to kind of orient you, the block areas are from Aurora at the north to Baseline on the south, and then from basically 17th Street to 19th Street. And so that's the geographic area that this overlay zone applies to. And again, it's just limited to that medium density area that's on the hill. When we zoom in, there's 132 parcels within this geographic area. There's 208 housing units in this area. So most of the properties are already duplex or triplex in this area. The property that specifically has raised this question is on the map where the red star is. And as Aaron mentioned, this property historically had a duplex on it. The parcel is currently vacant. According to the base zoning, you could build a triplex on that property by right, but with the overlay zone, it's limited to a single family home. You could subdivide the parcel based on its size into 2 single-family homes. So they could go through a subdivision process and build 2 detached dwelling units, but no attached dwelling units with the overlay zone.
What's the exact address?
756 18th Street.
And another quick question, if they were to subdivide into 2, would they have the same FAR as if it were just 1? So would these be 2 smaller homes?
That's a good question. I think, and I'm going off of memory here, I think the RM2 zoning district is an open space-based zoning district, but I'm going off of memory, so I'd need to check.
If it is, they would be 2 smaller homes then, wouldn't they? Or would you combine the open space for?
It'd be open space per parcel.
Right.
Correct.
Open space per dwelling unit, right? So,
correct.
And that tends to make smaller dwelling units, right?
Yeah, and just the geographic size, obviously, of the parcel you'd be limited based on setbacks and that sort of thing.
I see, thank you.
And can I just, for those of us who weren't on planning board, the difference between zoning and an overlay zone is, how would you describe that?
Great question. So think of zoning kind of describes what can you do on a piece of land. So what uses can go on it, how big can buildings be on it, how many housing units can be on it. So that's zoning. An overlay zone is a tool that can be used to think of it as truly an overlay on top of the zoning that can then add additional restrictions or allowances. So it can be a layered approach. So in this case, they have medium density zoning, and then this overlay limits that not to, or limits it just to single family homes, even if the zoning allows a duplex or triplex. And
That's a little nonsensical.
It can be confusing, and I think in this
Well, if it's medium density, but you have to build a single family house, it doesn't make sense.
No longer medium density.
Yeah, okay. But we have questions, but are you done?
I've got a few more slides.
Why don't we just see if he's going to answer them? Go ahead.
So part of what we wanted to look at is, okay, of all of these properties that are in with this area, how many of them could you build a duplex or triplex on today? And so we did that quick analysis. 30 of the 132 parcels, based on the zoning regulations, would be eligible for a duplex or a triplex today. So then we asked the question of, okay.
And they're single, they're current?
No, he's about to say.
He's about to say it.
Yeah, I'm about to answer that. So of those 30 parcels, how many of them are a duplex or a triplex or a single family home today? And how many of them have additional dwelling unit potential? And the answer to that is 4. 4 of these parcels could have additional dwelling units for a total of 6 additional housing units. So of those 4 parcels that are shown on green on the map, the one that is the label on the top left, that's the property that we've been talking about, currently has 0 dwelling units, could have 3 if the overlay zone were not in existence. And then the other 3 you can see currently have either a duplex or a single family home and could get 1 additional unit each. And that's what I got.
Okay, questions? I'm sorry. Oh, I think Bob was first and then Mary, or?
Keep that map up, Chris, because you're going there. So if we gave you the not a 5 tonight, would the proposal, obviously be a public hearing and so on and so forth, be to lift the overlay for that entire neighborhood, or would it just be a spot lift for the subject house?
I think you could actually do either approach.
So you want some instruction from us tonight as to
Yeah, I think some guidance on that would be helpful. What we were thinking about is if council were to give a not a 5 for us to go work on this, we would do some outreach directly to those property owners as well as the surrounding neighborhood, have a conversation and walk through what this would mean to be able to get some input from folks, and then based on that input, then come back to council with a recommendation on whether to lift the zone or not. Or the other option is we could be very targeted and potentially look at an approach where could we lift the overlay zone for this specific parcel. And I think we could explore both approaches.
Great, that's my question.
Mary?
So it seems to me like there's a third way it could be done, where you would just lift the overlay zone on this section. Is that,
That's what he just said.
that's what you said? Oh, not the
Just-
entire
Just
thing?
to clarify, Mayor, the most that would be potentially considered would be to lift it for these 6 blocks, not for anywhere else.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
That's the very most that we
Okay,
would.
I wasn't clear on that, thank you.
Yeah, we're not recommending that we look at MDOS citywide, just, if we were to do this, it would be just for this geographic area on University Hill.
Okay, and do you anticipate that to be a huge amount of time, staff time that it would take?
I don't anticipate it being a huge amount of staff time.
Would it come back to this council?
I think if you wanted it to, we could try and do that. It'd probably be scooching up in late September, October, but we might be able to try and squeeze it in.
Well, it's something to hear about. So we got Lisa and then
And so what other projects would that affect that are currently on your plate?
Based on the amount of staff time that I think this would take, I don't anticipate it affecting any of our other work plan items.
Okay, so this afternoon, I wrote Chris and David Gear, and I asked, could you basically do just one? Or, if you could do the whole thing. And so as long as we're looking at one or the whole thing, I'm happy to look at that range.
Sam.
So I have some concerns about the approach where we lift just one property out of an overlay zone. I mean, I'm sure that we would do it in the most clever way possible, but it would also be potentially thought of as spot zoning, and that's not what we usually do. So I think in general, I would be supportive of the process of going forward and learning more. We don't want to do this, I don't think, suddenly and without public input. So most important is that I think that we go through the right process of outreach and that we let folks know it's coming. But this is a pretty convincing slide. And so I think when most people would see a slide like this, then they would say, okay, it's outlived its usefulness as a tool at this point, because things have already gotten to where they're going to get to, mostly as far as intensity goes. So my thoughts are I could support a nod of 5. I don't really care so much if it comes forward this council or not, personally, because I think the answer is going to be obvious to either this council or the next one.
And I'll just throw in there, to me, given the level of complexity to just about everything related to planning in this town, to simplify by getting rid of an overlay zone that's already outlived its purpose, there's just some rather than cut a little hole in it, at least on the face of it. I know you need to go do a little research, but it makes a lot of sense to me to just deal with the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think because the person who's doing this, he wrote to me as well, and it's a choice of having a 6,500 square foot house or having 3 units. And I think we don't need any more 6,500 square foot houses.
I would concur with that.
Mary, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Sam, and in that it doesn't matter to me if it comes back in this council or the next, because it'll be, as he said, an obvious answer, so.
Okay, Aaron?
Well, I appreciate people's receptiveness to the idea, and Chris, those are phenomenal presentation of it allows us to really see what the potential implications are. And what I might say is we do want to do public outreach around this, of course, and I'm perfectly happy to leave it to CAC. I know we have a pretty crowded schedule for the rest of this council. If this comes forward and there's a spare hour, great, and if it needs to wait until December, fine.
Does that work for everybody? Because that's fine with me, but if we can get it done, great, and if,
Sure.
yeah, okay. Anything else you need from us on that?
Nope, that's
I
great.
think there's 5 people nodding, right? None? Thumbs up?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Anything on process? Other than we like meetings that don't go to 10:30.
Start at 7 o'clock every night.
Okay, with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Live from Paris on France 24.
But in Italy, the UN's warning fell on deaf